Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 8th installment of PvMer Spotlight. Today, I am joined here with a man who is not only an administrator in the Gear Discord, but a staff member in Oblivion PvM. A well-known man. He loves spamming, what you doing, cat? And some other emotes. And he got a big brain on his head. His name is Koekenpan.
Hello.
So, Mr. Koekenpan, would you like to give us a brief introduction about yourself?
Well, you mainly said everything, really. Yeah, I'm Koekenpan, from the Netherlands, and yeah, senior staff in Obliv and Jagex admin. I'm also maintaining the DPS cog, the Sheets DPS cog, which was originally made by fellow countryman Koekje, and I took it over when he went MIA, basically.
That is a very handy tool as well that I think most people use on a daily basis. So, thank you for that. So, would you like to tell us how you got into old school RuneScape and eventually endgame PvM, aka how'd you get into Oblivion?
Right. Let's start with like the original RuneScape because I'm quite old. So, in 04 I started RuneScape. Well, basically my classmates were like, "Hey, you should try out this game," and well, that's how it starts for like most people, I think. And yeah, well, since I was like relatively young and like my parents were like, paying for a subscription for a game isn't really a good idea. So I was basically free to play for like 2 years or something, like doing like woodcutting and shit. And then I eventually just used my allowance to pay for fucking membership, and then started playing a lot. And then yeah, not really into PvM at that point. I was just like skilling and like training Slayer all the way to like max combat and shit. And then EOC came, and then I kind of slowly quit. And old school was a thing right then, but I found it a little bit boring without updates. So eventually I came back to old school when they finally did get updates. And yeah, at that point I wanted to get into PvM, even though PvM at that point was just Cold Wars. And yeah, basically slowly working towards that. And then I joined Slay Stars when when about just before Chambers release, thinking it would be a PvM clan, but it quickly showed out that it was like a handful of people who just did Chambers really, and then a lot of people just didn't really like the leadership, and then I followed with them to Oblivion. And yeah, that's basically how I ended up in Oblivion.
Okay. So, the next question I'm going to ask is, what is your favorite piece of content in all of old school RuneScape, or just, all your favorite pieces of content in general?
Right. I think I mainly enjoy Chambers Serac. Soloing, probably. Yeah. And other than that, I don't think I really enjoy this game anymore. But I also kind of enjoy like figuring stuff out in this game.
I guess that's fair. I mean, there's a lot of people that are pretty burnt right now, but we'll get into that much later. So, this next question I'm going to ask is kind of a meme question, but I want to know about the lore behind What You Doing Cat and the first frame of the Disco Cat, or the multiple frames of the Disco Cat, I guess.
I see. Well, for the first frame, it was, I think that one was first. I had like the disco cat eventually. Like I made it in mode, and then I just put it in my like status thingy, where it is currently the What You Doing cat. And Gherkins kept mentioning how stupid the fucking first frame is, and he's like, you kept complaining like disco cat and like first frame and the stupid first frame of stupid disco cat, and then eventually he made it an emote, and that's basically how the emote came a thing. And then I think like at a certain point it just stopped being like really popular between us, and then eventually like I used it again, and all the people using it again, and then I made it my profile picture, and then yeah, basically that. As for What You Doing Cat, that's also something Gherkins made. I don't know if he made it or stole it, but I saw it as another of those cat server emotes. But the first time I saw it is that Gherkins made it. What are you doing emote? Because it kind of looks like the cat that asks, "What are you doing?" And then it's
Yeah.
kind of like some little little bit annoyingly like looking at like what are you doing? I don't know. It just looks funny.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's another emote too, Concern Dog, but I feel like
Right.
that's one that's just widely used by a lot of people. But I still remember during my Halloween stream, you pulled up and called me Concern Dog, and I was like, I started laughing so
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. I still occasionally just send that link that clip to other people. Yeah, it's kind of funny.
That's fair. That's fair. All right. Let us discuss the motivation in creating one of the greatest meme edits in all of Guildlore. So I started off the stream showing off the video
Right.
that he made of just a bunch of captions regarding ToA with that one song. I don't know what the song is, but it's using a lot of edits. So
Yeah.
tell me about that.
Yeah. So well, most of the time I just spend time on YouTube nowadays, and like I saw that slander meme template just being used a lot more often, and I was like, I could probably make this something into a meme, right? And at that time, I think it was like 2 months in of ToA, and I was like, I could probably still make like a slander meme for ToA, right? Because yeah, and I went to all those template clips and saw like, oh, I can probably use that as a caption, and probably can use that as a caption, and then yeah, eventually you just get like every single clip of that template, just having a funny caption, and yeah, and for the ones I wasn't able to add a caption, I just made a different clip basically. So like the Might the Gap one, which was pretty popular in Oblivion to send when people die at, to the gap. Yeah. So yeah, what do you think it was the funniest
Out of all of them,
part? Yeah. So
I don't
I'm
know
always
why, but I
wondering.
felt like it was the one with the 8 ambrosia doses or whatever, and then Spider-Man was walking up. I don't know
Right.
why, but that just made me crack up super hard when I saw that. But the whole thing's a
Right. Yeah.
masterpiece.
Yeah. Yeah. That was kind of funny. Yeah. Because he just walks through all those fucking chaos around him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was insane on release with just like how unkillable you were with ambrosia and just the distribution of
Yeah.
potions at the start. But
Yeah. When power gave like ambrosia still, that was like kind of insane. And like on release, I just didn't know how broken ambrosia was. Even though Stamps was like
yeah,
saying like
I didn't either.
constantly like use ambrosia, the thing is broken. And
I
I'm like,
didn't know
okay.
much about it, and then I was like, wait, what is this? And then
Yeah.
I drank it. And I'm like, what the fuck? And it
Yeah.
overheals you too?
Yeah, it was actually insanely busted. It still is, really.
Yeah, it's all is pretty fucking nasty because that's all. That's the
Yeah.
only thing I feel like you really need in an entire Warden's fight is like 2 sips of ambrosia.
Right. Yeah.
All right, so like my next question. Well, first things first. Are you ready to vent? Because I feel like this is what's gonna happen. We're gonna start venting.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
mean, I'll probably be a little bit more on the defensive side towards Jagex, which I I could be sometimes.
Okay. So I want to hear your thoughts regarding Tombs of Amascut, as well as
Right.
I know CAs came out as well, so we can also talk
Mm-hmm.
about CAs as
Right.
well regarding Tombs of Amascut. So, floor is yours.
Okay. Well, let's start with the positives, I guess. I think it's okay to have like a raid where more people can access to as an entry point, maybe for like people to raid. But I think No Monkey said it pretty well, where the skill ceiling is not really there. Well, the skill floor is like relatively low, which is fine. But yeah, the skill ceiling isn't really there. Well, I think it's mostly like hard on a wrong way, where like um, a lot of difficulty comes from endurance, which I don't think like people on old school really like that anymore.
Yeah.
So that's basically like my point about the skill ceiling. As for like how they scale it and like all the formulas, engine changes and shit, I think that part is just really well done by the JMODs. But like at the end of the day, we still play this game for the gameplay, not like how well the formulas are or like how well the numbers line up or something, right? Like even I can say that. So, I mean, if I can say that, then yeah. Um, then yeah, I think like Jagex have a point because I think Husky was like, ToA is so good and like, good graphics, good balancing. Or all balancing is just another question. But yeah, I think that part, like the design, is okay if you just take it from Jagex point of view, but like, yeah, I don't think it just doesn't. I don't know how to say it. Like, I think it just doesn't really line up with the expectations we had. And then as for the negatives, which I was already pretty negative, I don't know. Like, I think the release was fine as well. Like, not that many bugs. But I think like overall they're uh like overall they're like what's it called? They're I'm blanking a little bit. Like overall they're like what's the word again? Uh what they like wanted with ToA was just not really there. Really.
For the endgame players or for like.
Yeah, I think overall, even I think for the end game, it's obviously the most noticeable where like we don't get the content we want. But I think long term, it should also hurt mid game players, right? Because they just get a very accelerated mid game experience, or like mid to higher game experience, and then they eventually become or our type of players, which they either do the harder raids like Chambers, challenge mode, hard mode top, or QB itself, or they just quit because they are bored and they don't get new content.
Yeah. I
So
think
I
it's.
don't
Oh,
know.
sorry.
Yeah, go on.
I was gonna say I think it's good to have stepping stones for players to like get closer and closer to endgame,
Yeah.
because if we have more players making it to endgame, then that does mean there might end up being more content for endgame. Because right now, I think the masses, there aren't too many players that are in the endgame. So I feel like there still needs to be more stepping stones. Maybe like more items in between the big raid items. I know we have Bofa, but it is still a bit expensive, so you do have to grind for it a bit. But like I said, having more content that people can kind of get into to get better, and more items for people to start getting to like doing hard pieces of content is a good thing. But the other thing is that when adding content, right, there needs to be some replayability. Otherwise, people aren't really going to enjoy it. Because look at Next, right? Next is one of the best ways to make money in the game. People barely do it, though, because it fucking sucks. It's super repetitive.
Yeah.
It's boring. It's basically the same encounter. There's not too much diversity from encounter to encounter. Whereas ToB, I mean, you can argue and say, like, it's the same rooms, but the rooms play out differently every time, and there's so many things that you can master. Now is probably one of the best examples of that. But with ToA, it relatively plays at the same, like, through almost every single room. Like, not much changes. And then Baba room, you could say, yeah, it changes, but it doesn't feel good with the way it changes, because it's like, oh, this monkey spawned over there. Now I have to drag my cursor from here to there.
Yeah, there's just a little counterplay to that, which, I don't know. That's not really fun. And, go on.
That's just the main thing. It's just for endgame players, it just needs to be more dynamic. And they, of course, need to make sure that there is high skill ceiling and not just stack on invocations to make things die a lot slower.
Yeah, that comes back to the endurance thing. I also think a lot of invocations doesn't really give the same vibe as Stay Vigilant, where it also benefits you in a way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So things like Medic could also, instead of just being a 100% DPS loss by killing the swarms, it could also make it that those swarms would hit Kefri, or like if you do it correctly, you either get better DPS or you maintain the same DPS. Like, you know what I mean? Like if you have to crossbow it, you lose 3 ticks, right?
Yeah.
And what if you just get a hit equivalent to 3 ticks out of 5 of the fang, of a fang head?
You could even have it where, based on what weapon you use and like the ticks, it like does X amount of damage to Kefri. But I'll say this now, that's the first time I've ever heard an idea like that, and I think that is actually a really well done idea, because kind of reminds me of, you know, like you want people to use Feeling Special to make Akka come out of his Simon Says as soon as possible, right?
Right, yeah.
I kind of wish there was an invocation where Akka would just sit there and attack you while you're dealing with Simon Says still, because then you have to do Simon Says, but you can still attack him. The only time where it would matter is if the shadow's out, but that's one of my biggest gripes, is that if that happens, you literally have to wait until it's over to do damage to him.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of mechanics where you have to deal with it, it's mostly either just to avoid a bad time. It's not to like actually improve like the kill itself. Like for example, you could if you take popping crabs at P2 Versic, you could either freeze it or you could pop it while maintaining DPS, right?
Yeah.
And like one of it is really hard, like popping the crab and like not trying to blow up your teammates or yourself. And the other one is just massive DPS loss, because you have to freeze it and then run away from it, and you're probably doing it inefficiently anyways, right? And yeah, it's just things like that, which is the depth of TOB, and probably occasionally at Chambers as well, but not so much at ToA. It's just dealing with the mechanic. And I think the issue is the more Jagex is capable of doing adding like interesting mechanics, I think they just leave it at that. Like the mechanic is beautiful enough, and then they just don't think about how it would interact with like the player. I don't know. Like
Yeah, I think that's a good thing that with chambers is that at least in a team setting, of course, they're very simple. It spits on you. You have acid trail. But what you could do is like move around and do attacks so you don't lose DPS and take less damage or no damage. But that's very hard to take no damage from it. Same thing with the falling red crystal, like or the burn. The burn is super good. Like there's so many cool things that you can do with it, like pre-dodging and sitting far back to make the burn happen a bit later. So there's just all these small mechanics in chambers that you can really use to your advantage to have a better experience for yourself and your other teammates. And that's what I like about Ulm. And I'd say like Berserk might not have as many of those like small things, but then again you have like P1 and this whole system of like Halo P1, and then as you mentioned, popping crabs and trying to maintain your DPS and not kill your teammates. And then I'd say Berserk P3 is a little more on the simple side, but still you got crab popping, and then of course tanking. Tanking is a very important skill, and you don't want to kill your teammates.
Tanking. Yep.
So I feel like those two fights all have like their little intricacies that really shows like how skilled players are when it comes to maintaining DPS and not griefing your teammates.
Yeah, whereas ToA is mainly just if you don't deal it properly, you either die or you do it like perfectly, almost perfectly.
I like skulls in that sense. Like the whole skull mechanic, I think is cool in teams. But I don't know. There's not really many mechanics where it's like someone gets like a burn or something and you have to like deal with it accordingly. It's just like, okay, lightning bomb here, run to shadow or run away from shadow. And that's what I think sucks is there's not really too many attacks that are targeted at one player and you have to deal with it, or targeted at multiple players and you have to deal with it. P1 is kind of stay away or stay next to each other, hit obelisk, the end.
Yeah. In many ways, like how ToA or like wardens are like designed feels a little bit of a like it's easy to compare it with Verzik, because like the way it's structured is like kind of similar. Like it starts with a rare random object, a static object in the middle that you have to hit it, and then suddenly another creature comes, and then you think it's over, and then oh no, there is like a third phase. So it is really easy to compare it. Like like obelisk, you just stand still, whereas P1 Verzik, you have to hide from the attacks, like things like that. It's just they really did make it make it easier for themselves by making it so similar to Verzik.
Yeah. I think one thing that could have made it a lot more of a satisfying fight, I like P2, but to make it more satisfying, the obelisk attacks on their own are pretty nice, but I think they should add mechanics similar to Ulm, where there's these attacks that target players and you have to do things accordingly during the phase, because that would really spice it up. Maybe having some of those orbs that we dealt with P1 happen during P2 would really spice things up, because people tend to kind of clump up together. So that would really make it a bit scary if you have that happening and an obelisk attack, or like attacks from the obelisk happening at the same time.
Yeah. Obviously, like the main suggestion I've heard is just the both warden attacking you, which was also a popular suggestion for a reason, obviously. And that would probably make it a lot more different compared to like Versus P2.
Oh yeah. I'd be kind of curious how they'd want to actually integrate that. If it just be you actually have to attack both of them, or if you attack one of them and then it goes down and the other one's like invulnerable attacking you while you're like hitting the other one's core, and then it swaps in the vulnerability, or if it's just there's like so many ways they could handle it.
Yeah. gonna be interesting, yeah. Like how they would do it.
Some other things is if we're looking away from Warden, like Bava is just like I feel there's so many things you could have done differently there instead of it just for one, it just beats your ass. And that doesn't feel fun, right?
Yeah, I've been researching it. No, I had been researching it. Like, I think the main issue is that how much he hits through prayer, and how much the base hit itself is.
Yeah.
And that's kind of broken. And then when people still ran quiet prayers, it was really noticeable even then, because the way they implemented quiet prayers is just a little bit broken. Well, it isn't broken; it just works as intended. But yeah, I think it's a little oversight. But and then you have deadly prayers, or what's it called? Silent prayers. What was it
the
before?
Old one?
Like,
I think it was silent prayers. The one that
the 25%
increases the damage.
One. Yeah, that would be even more broke. I think it would probably just almost double the amount of damage if you have both silent and quiet prayers on. Like, there is a reason why people didn't run it. Yeah, and yeah, I think it's really noticeable at Baba, because prayer does the less there, and it would be even more, less with quiet prayers and deadly prayers, or quiet silent prayers, was it?
100%. I think the issue is that with Baba, right? There's not too many mechanics in it. Okay, so you have Monkey in Room, Bonds Baboons that hit Sarcophagus, okay? And then it does a slam attack, it drops boulders, stand next to boulder. So it's the boss itself isn't really a threat unless you give it damage, right? Like, look at Groudor, for example. Like, of course it's a God Wars boss. God Wars bosses don't really have a lot of mechanics behind them, and this is like comparing it to a raid boss. But what's scary about Groudor? He has a range attack that hurts pretty hard, and he can punch you for like 50 plus.
Yeah.
So,
well,
I don't know. I think they just need to...
I think it's... Oh, go on.
I was going to say, I think they needed to add something more to the room to add some kind of urgency or some fear factor, because all they can do is just add, punches.
More
hard-hitting punches, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I think most of the pre-EOC bosses are just designed to be like more and more damage, like a lot of like unavoidable damage. And the way they countered that is like a lot of defensive power creep as opposed to like offensive power creep. Obviously there is still offensive power creep in pre-EOC, but Bruise with Overload is their main source of healing, and like Unicorn and like things like that, and Soul Split later on as well. Or I don't know, I don't really remember the history that well. But yeah. And as for old school, or like for Warden, no, for Baba is I think that also boils down to like invocations that doesn't really like add to the fight, like your own DPS, which like something they could do, for example, is that they eventually just, or like there's an invocation where they spawn the Baba waves monkeys, and one of them is like a volatile, and you could explode it like near the southwest square or whatever, or middle square, I don't know, and then it explodes, and then it deals damage to Baba or something, I don't know, which also is a question, why doesn't the volatile explode other monkeys? I don't know. Why does the volatile or like the cursed baboon venom doesn't damage the other baboons? I don't know, like things like that. I like how you could like use the attacks of a set boss monster to itself, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you know those games, right? Where you have a big boss, it seems impossible to kill it, but there is a flaw in the attacks the big monster does that you can use it against them.
Oh man, like right as you said that, I just got Destiny vibes. The Taken King, because he's trying to like, I don't know what attack this man's doing. He's like summoning the darkness to kill you, and then you blow up like these bombs that spawn from like his minions, and then you open up his heart, and then you detonate the bomb to do damage to him. And like
Right.
that's basically the main way of damaging him. At least in Destiny 1. I know in D2 they did it differently, where you actually damage him. But
Right.
yeah, I
Yeah.
know what you mean. Where it's like you have like this big bad dude, and you think like it's impossible to do something to him, but no, he's just an idiot. He has flaws.
Yeah. And I think a lot of big bosses are designed like that, where they have like mechanical flaws in them, and you have to like use that against them. And I wish like even with the amount of engine changes we had in old school, that we had that, but it's a little bit underutilized. And I heard Mod Arcane use the skulls like of P3 as one of example of the thing I've just explained as an attack that you can just bounce back to him.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's still underutilized.
Yeah, it'd be cool to see that more. Quickly, just bouncing back to Baba though. You know, I think one thing that would have been interesting is, as you said, Baba waves. Maybe having exclusive monkeys in that encounter. So not just like the normal baboons and the ones that you see in the wave before, but maybe have one that brings Baba's attacks to what it does right now. So reducing Baba's damage, and then if this monkey's out, then it like
Right.
reduces how much your player actually protects from like the NPCs, so it would bring it back to like Baba hitting you super hard.
Right. Yeah. Someone in the chat mentions purples at Versic as well.
Oh man.
Yeah. Purple crab.
Friggin' bring out some like undead baboons with like nurse hats, heal up Baba to full HP.
Yeah, those shamans probably gonna do that.
Oh man, that would be fucking. That would be actually fucked.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just with ToA, I liked it, and again, it's been an opportunity for me to meet new people and bring people who are getting into PvM. It's just that there's still so much room for them to add stuff to it and really make some changes to make it more fun for everybody without taking it away from people that are doing it at the base level, because the invocation system exists.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, just main thing is just missing invocations at the top,
Yeah.
basically.
I think outside of just adding invocations just for the sake of money, that idea you had of making it where it diversifies the fight without taking away from the total time to do it would also be kind of cool, because that medic idea was actually, I felt like that was ingenious, to be honest.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure if I think Hemi said that as well in his video.
I might have missed that then, but it would also mean that if you're not prepared with the appropriate gear, then you could actually turn this invocation on to make the fight a little bit more bearable, too. So it'd actually be a completely different way of handling the fight if you don't have the right equips for it.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Yeah, like eventually, the only gear changes you have is just like if you have what's that thing called, where your special is like 100%. That's probably the only change in gear really, and then like downgrades in like offensive gear where so you can bring more prey pots or something like that.
I think initially I was thinking that people, when they were going to speedrun it, this is of course before ToA actually came out, I thought that meta was going to be Torva if you're just doing chill money runs and then use Inquisitor, because I thought Crush was going to be really good in the raid. Turns out that wasn't the case. It's actually Stab because of the Fang.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's kind of weird that they made stab the dominant style. I don't know. Like, they... Well, we'll probably come back to it on a different question, but with the Fang, for example, that became like the best in slot for ToA. And they also mentioned like we didn't expect it to be this strong when you made like the entire raid weak to stab, basically.
I mean,
Which, yeah, I don't know.
Fang outside of ToA before they changed it was just so strong because you could just get it on an Iron Man and it would replace a lot of items. Like, for example, the Lance. You didn't really need the Lance. You didn't really
Right.
need any of the top tier melee weapons like Rapier, Sail Door, Ink Mace because maybe it's not the best in DPS, but it still does the job relatively well. So,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, it was just disgusting. It was literally a melee bofa that everyone can get their hands on because of how cheap it is.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Just as long as it's not the go-to for everything and it just makes Scythe completely useless because, Scythe is a strong weapon. I want it to feel strong. It comes from a raid. It's a mega rare. If the Fang was a mega rare, I guess it'd make more sense. But
yeah, but it was so much fun. Like back when we didn't know like if Fang was best, like max strength and salt made your max hit jump to 52, the base hit, and
Yeah.
that means like it gains the fucking max hit on the second and third hit. So that was like really good to see, like the 52, 26, 13.
yeah,
When we're like used to 48 for years. And also another thing which the chat is also mentioning is like I was pushing for the 180 mage, like some sort of power crystal, because back then like they didn't do the 4x, right? The 4x
Oh my God.
multipliers. I wanted to, I wanted power to give a mage crystal that does 180 mage but drains the other stats if you have salt, for example. So you basically only use it if you are primarily maging. And yeah, and why 180? It's because I think 177 or something gave you a max hit of 100, and I really wanted that, so I made it 180 to like round it up, basically.
That
And
is interesting. And what if you did that for each style, where if you instead of go power, there's like some alternate routes, and
right.
it would give you something that would drain your other stats. So if you had salts, it would wipe salts, and it would just buff that one combat stat. Because I could see that being viable choices in speedruns. Because then you'd go for this first, just so you'd get like the melee boost, and then you go for this for the range boost. So that would really,
like,
it diversify things a lot.
Well, I don't know if you remember Fight Kiln in PoC.
I do remember it. I did,
yeah,
but
eventually,
I never completed it.
Like during the waves, you get certain crystals. Like one of them is really overpowered. It's just like ambrosia.
Invulnerability, right?
Yeah, invulnerability, and that's why I thought of it, because there was another crystal that gives you like 255 mage, or I don't know, like something crazy like that.
What the fuck?
And like back then you had like Storm of Armadale as well, which was really powerful, and then you just smoked that entire cave.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that gave me like a little bit of the inspiration of like having power give some mage crystal, because I was really disappointed that like Shadow isn't like the weapon to go to, the go-to weapon for everything, basically.
Yeah.
Just like Scythe is, and in lesser extent T-Bow.
I mean,
To a lesser extent.
if they were to add something where it's like it's going to buff like one individual combat style, they would have to be somewhat careful, because if they did add something like a 180 mage crystal, then it would literally just be shadow everything. I don't think there'd be any other option. It would just be shadow everything.
Yeah. Well, they only like the only counter is that that AK and like B2 Warden protection prayers basically.
Yeah. So that would actually be kind of cool to spice up the team meta a bit. It would really make you think more carefully about your choices on like what you'd want to get. If you added some RNG to it, then that would suck. But I think it'd also be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Man, they should hire us for QA. Time for us to dev a better ToA. Because some of these ideas actually seem pretty cool.
I honestly don't think it would work. Or no, like us being QA.
Probably not.
Like we might have the good ideas, but we'll probably be overruled or something.
True. Oh well, maybe one day. So, is there anything else we'd like to talk about regarding ToA before we move on to the next question?
I don't know. Maybe something will come up like along with the other questions, but for now I don't have anything extra.
Alright, so this is something that, of course, people have noticed in Oblivion, with a mass unfollowing exodus of JMODs unfollowing a bunch of endgame PvMers on Twitter. But there's also been kind of a radio silence from JMODs in Discords, because before, it wasn't like a one-on-one communication between player to JMOD in these Discords like Oblivion, PvM, and WDR raids, but they were, asking for feedback, asking for help, and they'd get feedback from those players. I've looked at the message history of some of the JMODs to see that it's been radio silent since September, pretty much. So right around the start of ToA, after that, they haven't said a single word. And I'm just kind of curious to hear your thoughts about this radio silence, this ever-growing silence that doesn't seem to be getting better any soon.
Right. Just to like start off, like I don't want to sound like entitled for JMOD, like a direct JMOD line communication, direct line for communication. Because at the end of the day, we're also players, and Reddit are players, and people on Twitter are players, and I don't know, like Solitary or Valiance, I don't know. Like people deserve, especially in this game, like some way of communicating to JMODs. But to start off is like we had 2 members from Oblivion playtesting it, basically, Umer and Stamps. And we had more Oblivion members testing previous content, like some content creators, Ross, before he got on the blacklist, and other people, I don't remember all of them, really. Numbnuts as well, I think. And
Lucid as well.
Yeah, Lucid as well. And then for the Fang, that entire idea came from Numbnuts as well. And I created that graph of how it would scale, or like how it would, like what the DPS would be against certain defenses. And Arcane even came to me like, hello, like, can you help me make this graph, or like help me make my own graph, because he wanted obviously to tweak the stats, because the stats would be even more broken with the old stats and the double roll mechanic. And so I helped him with that. And then like I feel like and with the shit with the shadow as well, where I reported that bug, and I feel like there is a little bit of betrayal, or like I don't want to sound entitled, but it feels a bit weird. And then I think it is mainly because of the person behind it. And I don't want to sound mean or something, because I think it's a fair trait to have, right? If you dedicate like hours of your life making content, and then everyone just shits on it. It just feels like you must feel like really shit. But
Yes.
I don't think we actually mean it that way, and we are obviously really passionate, and some of them even more passionate than they should be. And I've said multiple times as well, like, guys, relax.
Right?
I know you're mad, but come on, like, you know what I mean? Like, like during the drop rate release, people were like really, really insufferable with when the drop rates would be released, and I've always said, like, just wait it out. It will be released. Like, but as for Arcane, I think yeah, it's just a side of his personality, really, that he just I don't know.
I could see, trying to talk in a chat and then absolutely getting like eaten alive as if you're jumping into a pool of piranhas as a reason that they're not really responding. But I remember in was it Weeder Raids, there wasn't too much of that on Staff Lounge I recall. So I'm kind of surprised that it's a bit silent on in that regard too, because it's maybe it's just the fact that he's just too busy or doesn't even want to bother talking to people to hear like their thoughts
Yeah,
and things anymore. Maybe he got tired.
yeah.
Of it.
Another thing is that they probably leave the communication up to the CM now, and I personally rather talk directly to a dev or a QA.
Yeah.
But I mean, the CMs are really nice, but I don't know. Um the way I thought about it, and I think it's like, at first you have CMs who like didn't know how it works, so they just forward us to the devs, right? And the devs just intervened and they just did the direct communication to the players. But now, like, CM starting to be more involved and like understanding more about the game. It just starts to be, but not enough where we can ask them directly everything, and that's like the awkward point we are at the moment. I feel like, where we have to talk to the CMs, but the CMs don't know enough of the game, so we have to still talk to the dev, but we can't talk to the dev because the dev wants to leave it to the CM.
Yeah, it'd be kind of cool if we had more of a direct communication line, and
Right.
not just like us as Oblivion players, just us as a whole group of PvMers talk with, the JMODs that develop the content, because sometimes, I'm not trying to say like you ever do a bad job when you're communicating like one idea to another person, but as shown by Gardic Phone, which I know is a meme game, it's very easy for messages to get lost from person to person, and the next product you'll end up with, like, you'll start off with a prompt of like, hey, let's make Olm like harder, and then the next thing you know, it's like fucking bottom floor Olm, and you just see giant Olm cock or something. I don't fucking know. But the main point is having that direct conversation line would be more beneficial. It'd be
You
cool.
Yeah, you see that with the Fang as well, because I feel like Arcane wanted the double roll to be the double roll, like how it was implemented,
Yeah.
right? And then it came to the like to the blog or the CM, and then to the blog, and then they worded as if only the attack roll got doubled, or like double rolled,
That wasn't the case though.
and then it ended up being in the game with the accuracy double roll, instead, like double rolling both attack and defense. And yeah, then they can come back to that old wording of the CM, even though the intention was basically the dev saying like it double rolls accuracy instead of only attack. And yeah, there you can see, like, as communication goes through like other other stages, like some bits of information get lost.
Maybe it'd be nice if we had someone that we had like specialized in communicating regarding PVM stuff. Someone that has a PVM background, and on top of that, maybe they do dabble in a little bit of developing, not like a direct developer that develops big pieces of content, but they like help out with stuff.
Right.
Because that would make
Yeah.
it easier to communicate pitches if someone understands, end game PVM. And I'm not trying to say like, oh, maybe the current person that communicates the ideas have like no knowledge of PVM whatsoever, but
Right.
it'd just be nicer if it was kind of like more toward PVM only when the person was like communicating from like person to person instead of being like, oh, I'm going to talk about scaling. Oh, I'm going to talk about PVM. Oh, I'm going to talk about PKing, because it gets pretty confusing pretty fast.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I just hope that it comes back to the point where we're having a little bit of communication again, but at the same time, I'm not sure, because I do kind of feel bad for them. They're trying their best talking with us, and we're just baby raging super hard. But I understand we're all passionate players. I love this game. I've been playing this shit since junior year of high school, and I haven't put this game down yet. I probably won't, but we'll see. You never know.
Yeah, we're all passionate in some sort of way, kind of form, and yeah, it would be nice to like them listening to us. But I know we are probably like a very small percentage, and we're probably like the worst people to listen to, because they have to compete with mobile games. They have to compete with other entertainment shit nowadays, and like they focusing on just the gamers, the hardcore gamers. It's just like, let's say, a dying breed or whatever. But it would still be nice for OSRS to be that niche game where it still is like difficult, or listening to the higher level community.
I mean, I'd say it'd be kind of nice, but at the same time, it would also suck, because I do enjoy meeting new people, and I want more players to get into the game. So there should be that kind of fine balance of adding stuff that people can do, and maybe having it where the skill ceiling is high for it too. Like in Rage and RS3, for example, I think is a great example. I've probably said this like 100 times now. Probably talk more about that later, but that's my thinking. I'd love to see more hard stuff, but at the same time, I want to see more players.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
I agree.
Anything else you'd like to say regarding the silence, or shall we move on to the next question?
Yeah, I think there is multiple factors of them being silent, but I think most of it is just kind of sad that they don't want to talk to us because of our negativity towards ToA. And I hope eventually, like, the JMODs can like separate the negativity towards the content with the negativity towards the JMODs, because I think Arcane is probably one of the best devs we've gotten since Kieran. But yeah, if he manages to separate that, like, our negativity towards the content to the person, that would be really good.
Yeah. Alright, so let's talk about a growing issue. So I think we already spoke about it a little bit, but it seems that Jagex has kind of shifted to a stance where they are gearing all their just like PVM stuff toward entry and mid tier compared to end game players. And I think on the stream they said we're never gonna have something like ToB ever again. And I'm just wondering, like, your thoughts on that, and what are some potential solutions that will either meet in the middle or benefit both end game and early game players?
Okay. So, well, we are both have been in the mid game. Like, we all have been, basically, or will be. And to me, just having the high-level content being released was just enough motivation for me, even though it was just God Wars or like a new Slayer boss, Chambers of Zarek. But that was just motivation for me to get better and like train my stats. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even though like even back in pre-OC, I would never get there because it is all expensive. Gear is expensive. Herblore is expensive. Prayer is expensive. I would still look up and I'd be like, I want that, and I will work towards it. And I don't care what is like in between where I currently am and what like is there like beyond the horizon. And unfortunately, that's not how it works in 2022 anymore. So yeah, that's kind of sad.
I know there's like some pieces of content you can kind of work toward, as you were saying. Like I think Gauntlet's pretty nice because you don't need too many requirements outside of just high combat stats. I know it's very niche. Not everyone's a Gauntlet enthusiast. No, I am not on text payroll. Thank you very much. All right, I actually enjoy it, but I think it is nice content to kind of get you prepared in some like advanced concepts like managing your inventory and just like decision making, resource gathering, and of course movement. Movement's a big part in that fight, and trying to not die.
Right. Yeah.
But regarding the fact that they are catering more and more to entry level players, it is nice. You know, it is kind of nice because more players, but it shafts us. And as I said earlier, I think one of the best solutions is introducing content that, you know, has the high skill ceiling. And of course, looking at something like, let's say, Telos or Zamorak boss and RS3, I feel like those are bosses that some people, of course, you might have to grind a bit to actually do them. You could do them at low level enrages, and if you feel like, oh, this is kind of easy at this rate level, you can just kind of continue to go up on the enrage list. And if something is currently impossible at this very moment, which was what I was hoping was going to happen with ToA and didn't end up being the case, god damn it, it'll end up being possible in the future. So it'll allow players to come back to it with new gear.
Yeah. Replayability is also really important.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to have the content thrive at release or like X amount of people playing it, engaging with it, but it's another thing to have people come back to said content. And I feel like Chambers and TOB did that a lot better.
Yeah. I don't know, it's just Tob was such a magical raid. They did so many things good. I know I'm like more of a Chambers player, but it's easy for me to see the beauty that is the Tob speed community and just the amount of players that just do Tob on a daily basis. Because I feel like Cox is a little bit more unpopular in the speeds aspect. The people who do it, they're really fucking good at it, but there's not many of them.
Right, yeah.
But
yeah, it's probably also more of an endurance thing. I don't know, because for Chambers you have to focus like the entire raid, right? Because running through all the corridors and etc. that counts. Like that time counts. Whereas TOB, you just you can like cut it up in pieces, right? You have to do Maiden really well, and then you can probably take a break, maybe take a piss. I don't know, like get off the shakes and like and then go to bloat and etc. So you can cut that into like separate entities, really.
Yeah, when you put it like that, Chambers really is just like a gauntlet of bosses, and of course there's having to know the mechanics for each one. And CM, it's a lot more about inventory management and knowing procedure, and it's a lot of information to like take in when you're first getting into it. And of course, there's like all those different roles and different things you gotta do with banking. Like, oh, you need to get pots, you need to get ready to cross.
Yeah, because TOB community made it room times instead of overall time. Like trading and buying pots just isn't really a part of the speedrun itself. Whereas at CM you have to like do the banking really quick and shit.
Yeah.
So that part is also really important. And
what do you prefer? Do you prefer it when it's like where it's actual total time where you don't want to like sit down and jerk off, or do you not mind there being like some content where it's like total time and other content where it's like room times?
Well, yeah, at first I was like, we should make it overall time because all the trading is not really, and like I feel like taking a lot of breaks in between an overall time makes it like a bit, it felt unnatural to me, especially like if you consider other speedrun categories or like other speedrun games, they rarely pause. And even if they do, it's just because it's like an over 24-hour speedrun. So they have to pause, otherwise they would fucking die from. But yeah, that's why I thought like initially, and probably still am on the overall gang basically. But yeah, I think the part where you can like have a room time where you can just completely focus on just the combat aspect can have some like fun ideas, but yeah, that's also why we have like separate categories, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think I don't mind there being the option, but in regarding to speeds, I think that you should look at overall time and not just combining all the room times, which is the one thing I'm a little sad about with ToB, because someone said it, ToB Mickey Mouse fake. It's just all the trading. Yeah, all the trading is just.
Yeah, it's not just like if it's just the trading, like okay, fine, but I think some people also abuse it to just get rid of their nerves, and I think that part is also really important in a speed run like setting where you can control your nerves and like deal with a what's it called? What is it? Sub 20-minute overall time. I don't know what the overall time would be if
trust me,
that was the meta.
Nerves are tough. Like just yesterday, I was pretty shook trying to complete some of the CA tasks. I felt like my heart was about to come out of my chest trying to complete the insanity CA task. But yeah, I don't know. It'd be kind of nice to see more of an emphasis in the future, at least for ToB. But I doubt that's ever gonna happen. I think ToB is just gonna stay the way it is right now.
I think it's mainly like be the change you want to see, because I've seen some people like already like on that fucking I want it to be overall time. But I feel like be the change you want to see, because otherwise like you are just in a vicious cycle of, well, I'm not gonna do it because room time is meta, and then like no one's gonna do it, and then it's basically a fulfilling prophecy. And now that you mention it, like now that we're talking about room time versus overall time, like I think a year ago or like 2 years ago in Minecraft speedrun, like the main category is like RSG any percent, and pausing was allowed there because I don't know why they allowed pausing, but they work with in-game time, so pausing would just stop that timer, and people were eventually just starting to pause to just get rid of their nerves, and then people were like, wait, we probably shouldn't do this, and then they changed that if you pause just to get rid of the nerfs, that time gets added.
Okay.
So yeah, I feel like just because rune times is meta at the moment shouldn't mean that it should always be that case.
Yeah, okay.
If a lot of people run overall time, that will eventually be the. But yeah, like you said, it's probably not gonna happen just because people are probably not really into speedrunning top anymore. I don't know.
I think the only way we'd see something like that is if they made like a drastic change to the Oblivion Diary in that sense, because that diary has so much power even outside of Oblivion. A lot of players base their times on that, and even if they're not in Oblivion, they try to complete it regardless. I'm not sure if it has like a hard emphasis in like the Sanity Diary. If they look at ours and they're like, oh, maybe we should make these changes because every clan is different. But it definitely does have a, I don't want to say a hold, but it gives something to people. Like, people have something to do when they look at that time and like, oh, I don't have this time, let me go for it. So
yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I've actually thought about it, but I didn't want to say it because I'm not really a speedrunner myself. I just know a lot about like speedrunning in different communities, basically. But yeah, for example, we have Oblivion has the being room times, right? And then Jagex made CA's room time, and then for Harmo Top, we made it overall time. And what did Jagex do? They made it overall time as well. So I feel like Oblivion Diary has like that power, but I don't really want to be that guy that to shove it into the mouths of like the top community.
yeah,
I feel like neither me or the rest of the staff, maybe some people, but should have that audacity to do it. Basically, feel like.
I don't know why I just have this image in my head of just like CA times, and then the one with like the person puppeteering and it's like this whole chain. That's what I'm thinking right now. And at the top is the Oblivion people making the diary decisions.
Oh my god, dude. Yeah.
I mean, it always gives me something to do whenever they make changes. Right now I don't feel like I'm actively going for diary because there's just so many things I need to do, and the current changes right now are so tough. But eventually, I want to go for it. It's just slowly. I'm gonna go for it more like slowly.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
I know we kind of sidetracked a little bit, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. But we should probably get back to the main question real quick.
Yeah. Okay. What was the main question again?
So we're talking about, I think we're at the part talking about how we can make it better for endgame and early game players, like what Jagex can do instead of just catering to one side and not benefiting the other.
Right. I feel like your solution is probably the best, where you just give content where you just low skill ceiling, low skill floor, but a high skill ceiling. Which ToA could have been the perfect solution, but that's fine. Maybe a way to like accelerate like early game, mid game.
Yes.
Because to me, there are like two fun parts for me at least. Either the high end, where you just can kill whatever boss you want and you're maxed and etc. Or the early game part where you just go through all this quest and you get like dopamine release because of all the experience you get, and like skip like the early levels. But the part in between is the part I dread the most, or I dreaded the most, because training your melee stats to 99 is just really slow, and I don't think a lot of people have the time to do that. And that part could be like easily reduced somehow.
I mean, as someone who's like been working on multiple accounts and not all of them are done, only one of them is like kind of like a level I'm happy with. Account building takes a long time, even for experienced players. So
Right.
it'd be kind of nice if they did something to accelerate it. Now, there are two things that need to be considered when you want people to go from like early game to end game, and then having more end game players also means more end game content, or at least that's my philosophy. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but
No, no, I don't think so. Because RS3 did that,
yeah.
or
And
does that.
look at all the updates they've got. You have
Yeah,
Elder God
exactly.
Wars and all these
They
things,
just,
Elite
yeah,
Dungeons.
they made the decision to like, fuck the early game, fuck the mid game. We just give you 500k per hour. I don't know how many, or how much the XP rate is, and just go to town, get to the point where you can just do the end game.
Yeah. So the two things that I think need to be done to make it, where we'll have more of those updates is number one, accelerated progress in some way or another. I'm not saying like just nuke our current rates and just add some baloney thing that just accelerates XP rates like 3 times or 4 times, like double XP weekend. No. One thing they could do is continue adding quests that give like a good amount of XP. Of course, they did that update recently that led to like 1.4 million XP or however much from quests. So that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And two, I think they're already starting to add more and more different variety options to train your stats. Maybe they're still kind of slow, but Winter Todd, well, maybe not. Well, yeah, Winter Todd, Temporos, and then we have Guardians of the Rift, and now we have that smithing minigame. We're getting more and more options, which aren't necessarily bad XP rate options. And having more of those would be kind of nice because it's still a way to train and get some stuff out of it too. Well, maybe they could add some more faster rates as well. And then the second thing, I mentioned it earlier, is having more of those kind of milestones with equipment that help you do content that normally you might not be able to do as efficiently at lower tier. Maybe like, look at the jump from Blade Assailer to Scythe. It's a pretty big jump when you look at it on top. And I'm not saying, so just make Scythe obsolete, but I'm saying like maybe have a couple more
Have something
stuff
in between.
Yeah.
It would probably work, but like I feel like the jump between Blade of Solder or back then it was the Tentacle Whip to a Scythe or Blowpipe to T-Bow is so appealing because it's such a big difference between what previously was good.
Yeah.
But a way they could fix that is, you know how like the stats you actually need is just combat, basically. There is obviously like niche things like 96 woodcutting for Ice Demon and like 95 or even 99 thieving for a thieving room.
Yeah.
But ultimately, those aren't the stats you like desperately need to do endgame content. So because combat is for the skillers, really isn't that significant for like the time to 200 mil all. So what you could do is like accelerate combat XP to a decent point where people could actually get into the end game. But I don't know, like maybe it could be broken, I don't know.
Maybe,
But
but
that's a good way.
I don't know. I feel like isn't that hard to get your combat stats that like high. All it does is just takes a lot of time and just AFK in a nightmare zone or AFK at Sandcrafts for like hours and hours on end while you're on mobile or something. That seems like a chore. It seems like a big chore. So I feel like accelerating it would be beneficial. I don't know if like maybe accelerating it to a certain point would be good or bad, but there's just some propositions I've had. And having more of those items that are like more affordable too would be nice as well.
Right.
Because don't get me wrong, I think range is in a better place than it was before, but comparing like Fang to Whip or the prices of like Bofa to like an ACB, there are some big price gaps.
Yeah.
And Bofa is like it's a pretty good weapon. I like the fact that Bofa kind of sits in between all these ranged weapons, but I feel like when it comes to a strong tank busting range weapon or like a strong range weapon, it's either T-Bow or Bofa, no in betweens. You can use Ruby procs, but it's so slow. And you can look at Zabak as an example. It's like if you don't have those two weapons, good luck. Zabak's gonna take forever.
Yeah, I think the way they handle melee weapons, for example, it's just kind of weird because ultimately, like, yes, there is like 1 million melee weapons, but they all work kind of the same. They are like 4-tick or 5-tick, and they just hit something between a minimum hit and a maximum hit. Whereas range, like blowpipe is 2-tick, Bofa is 4-tick, T-Bow is 5-tick. Like yeah, like in that regard, like range is so much more like like variety. Like whereas melee is just yes, the weapon is different. Like there is a different skin on it, but ultimately it does the same. And I don't know, like they could still release more melee weapons and make it more common, and it's sitting between gaps. But yeah, I don't know if that would be a elegant solution at least.
I see what you mean. I mean, look at chins. We have chins, and for melee,
Yeah,
there isn't
as well.
really anything like that. I mean, yeah, they do stuff with special attacks, with Din's Bulwark hitting like multiple targets, D2H and stuff like that, but it's in the special and not the passive part of a weapon.
Yeah.
I would say Mage is kind of in the same ballpark. I kind of be like, I know one thing that's kind of nice about the Mage spellbook is that there's debuffs attached to it, right? Like with vulnerability and stuff. But
yeah,
it'd be kind of nice to have maybe Mage be more of a debuff role, or add something to one of the spellbooks that have like strong debuffs that might take away needing the Dragon Warhammer or something. I don't know. Be kind of cool.
Oh, remember what they pitched with the weapon before the Shadow became a thing?
Yeah, the one.
The Heka? Yeah, with the Arceus book, that was so clever. I like that.
The magic
a
bubble
lot.
drain.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, they scratched it, and I feel like the only thing they had to do was make it more powerful, but they didn't. They went for the same 5-tick hit hard weapon.
Yeah, it would have been so nice because then you would have just fought against NPCs and just started gaining more and more power as you hit stuff. It would be cool. Yeah. And then it would also mean like maybe you don't need an imbued heart or mage potion. You just keep hitting this NPC, and over time you'll get stronger and stronger to a certain cap, of course.
Right. Yeah.
But
yeah, it was such a fun. Like, would probably be a fun weapon, but yeah.
I don't know, it'd be kind of cool to see some more variety with what you can do with each combat style. Not just you have this weapon, it's good for stabbing stuff. You have this weapon, it's good for crushing stuff. The Scythe is the one that feels kind of unique where it hits multiple targets, and again, special attacks.
Like positioning matters a little bit, and size of the NPC matters, and like really good weapon, and it hits hard as well.
But yeah, that's just my the main thing is they just need to make it easier for people who start into the game to get to end game, because the grind is a big offset. Some of my friends will get into the game and they're still stuck in like the mid game, but they're not players that put a whole lot of time into the game. Right. I don't know if I'm a huge fan of just having people sink in hours upon hours just to get to the point of like being able to do the content I'm doing. I want to be able to play with my friends, and if they're getting turned off because of how long the grind is, that sucks, because it's like it just means that new players aren't able to enjoy this giant white salamander shooting all these special attacks at you. You could still argue and be like, oh, they can come in with like level 75 stats and RCB. Fuck that. It doesn't feel as satisfying if you're able to go in with like high stats and like a Bofa or Dragon Hunter crossbow. Like,
Yeah. Another thing is if they do invest that time and it turns out that they don't really like it, it is a lot of hours wasted. You have to think about that as well.
yeah.
And you could have done something else with that time, even though you can overlap some of the things. But yeah, it would be nice, like to to give them a bone for something.
Because I think
And I know like the gaming landscape has changed, and I think it's fine to have mid-level players accelerate or like
yeah,
get through the content faster.
I don't think it would really hurt endgame players too much having like an accelerated early game, and it also gives new players an opportunity to try out stuff to see like would they actually enjoy harder content, because I feel like people are just gonna burn out too early. So that's just my 2 cents on the matter. And if
How
you,
long have I been in Oblivion? Was asked in the chat. I think 4 or 5 years, coming next month, something like that. Don't know the exact join date.
all I know is that I'm gonna be a veteran next year. That's it.
Right, yeah. Time flies, man.
It really has flown. Like Jesus, did not realize it's been like over 2 years now.
2018, yeah. I think it's early 2018.
All right. Well, is there anything else we want to add on to that question before we move on to the next one?
I don't know. Like, just do it, Jagex. Do it.
I think I'll just end it off saying this. I kind of understand where they're going with the whole we need to cater to as many players as possible, but I still think that there's things that they can do to cater to everyone and make everybody happy. And I know it's not easy, and it will take some thinking outside of the box, but there are some things that they already have in RS3 that they can always carry over and try to adapt it to old school RuneScape and have that old school feel with the lore and the bosses and some of the mechanics we've got. Because Enrage, I think, is pretty cool. Invocation system, I like it, and they can still do a lot of things to make it better. Because the whole idea behind it is good. It's just how they executed it. Just needs a little bit of tweaking is all.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So, you mentioned earlier that you now help out big time with the DPS calculator. You basically took over and you manage that now. But talk about that a little bit, like how you got into it, as well as talk about your ever-growing knowledge of the Google Sheets and maybe Excel sheets as well.
Right. I think back in 2012, people started already like figuring out like how the combat formulas work. There was like during Nex, and people realized that the aggro mechanics of that of the minions outside just look at your overall defense. So people just figure out like certain gear, certain prayers that just work with de-aggroing them. And I found those findings in like some weird website. I think it was xp-waste.com, where people are already starting like I think early. So it was early 2010s. So people are already like figuring out the math behind games, right?
Yeah.
Like before that was just purely vibes, right? It's just I do this because it feels good, But people are starting to slowly get more into the efficient strats and like XP per GP per XP kind of calculations and things like that. But slowly also about combat formulas. And a big thing was chaotic rapier and chaotic longsword were weapons from dungeoneering, and you needed 80 dungeoneering for it, for just one weapon, because you barely have the tokens for that. And people were like discussing like which chaotic weapon is the best, because 80 dungeoneering back then, even though in the team was like pretty fast to get, soloing was like dog shit basically.
Yeah, you did
And
Zella.
yeah, and so people had the choice between chaotic rapier, chaotic longsword, and chaotic maul, and it was always a discussion like which one is better. And with the power of hindsight, we all know chaotic rapier was like the best by far.
Yeah.
But yeah, back then people didn't know, and common formulas were basically like trying to be figured out at that point, like how much the accuracy part matters. Like max hit was like pretty close, pretty like 1-to-1, because we can always see like the max hit, right? And yeah, just the accuracy part. And then few years later, I noticed the combat formulas by Bitterkoekje in on the old school forums, like the official forums. And I always lurked that, and just reading like what they found, and have like a lot of popular people as well, like Henke, like Wooks, Merrick as well, posting in that thread. I don't know, did Merrick post there? I don't know, I don't remember. And yeah, it was really well documented. I've made an archive of it because I saw that the thread just became like it gets slowly deleted, right? If you don't bump it.
Yeah.
So I started archiving it because yeah, otherwise it would be gone. And he made the DPS sheet as well, and I always try to like calculate it manually, or like using my own sheets, using that thread, and then I figured out that he made a sheet himself. And yeah, and then I always used that, and like kind of popularized it using Discord, basically, like always promoting that the sheet from like if you want to know calc it, like and shit like that. And eventually, like I think 2018 as well is when Bitterkoek just stopped updating it. And I even messaged him like, hey, Guardians worked like this, just like how you implemented the Darox damage rolls, which, by the way, is like you roll a damage like before the pickaxe multiplier. So it's just like, let's say you roll a 10 and your multiplier is 1.5, so you hit a 15. So certain numbers won't be hit, right? Because
Okay.
let's say,
So you only have certain hit rolls because of how it multiplies.
yeah, exactly. So you skip certain numbers, and that's how Dark works, and what's it called, Guardians as well, and things like I think Karis and leaf bladed battle axe, things like that. But yeah, he didn't reply, and then I thought, well, I know a thing about or two about sheets, and I could learn as well, because I'm always pushing myself to learn new things about sheets as well. So yeah, I just started adding more and more things, like chamber stuff mainly, because that was pretty dynamic at the time. And yeah, like, and even more things. But I personally, I don't what's it called, like, I don't know everything. Like, I don't know how to sim stuff efficiently. I don't know. I suck at the overkill part. So yeah, I have help as well. So yeah, I'm really grateful for it. And the base sheet is also really good.
Shout out Justin.
Yep. Shout out Justin.
I mean,
Shout out
you guys,
D5 as well.
you guys have all worked together to create one of the most helpful tools in all of RuneScape.
Right.
So, gotta give big thanks to you. So, thank you for that. Otherwise, I'd be sitting here like, what the fuck? What's the best weapon
Yeah,
use on
you
this?
would just still go off vibes, like testing like so many hours of
Yeah.
it, and you would not even get an accurate answer as well because some gear choices it's just really fine margins, like probably a percent or like even less than a percent, and that could save a tick in a fucking what's it called speedrun or something.
Oh yeah, 1,000%. So
Yeah.
having those tools like at your disposal is so nice. I know like some people that are really dedicated when it comes to like whatever content they speedrun. They'll of course ask people to make sims, or they'll make sims themselves. Because I believe Deo has made simulations for stuff in chambers. I think.
Yeah, you made a lot of it, I think.
Yeah, I also tried to sim something in a program called processing when I was talking to my friend Jimmy. We were getting into top speeds and well not speed a federal speedrunner Jimmy, for anyone knows. It's a mute me Jimmy. So people from WDR probably know him. But anyway, he had an idea for a P1 variation of God Book. And he said,
Right.
"Hey, do you think you could try to simulate this?" I was like, "I could. I mean, I have no clue, but I'll give it a shot." And I think how I did it was I just programmed every single like interval of hits to happen at like X number. So I have a thing that's like going 1, 2, 3, like just going down in the numbers, and then based on what number it is, it'll like print out damage to an HP value until it eventually hits 0, and then it prints out the number and then repeats. So I had it like looping over and over again until it like reached like 1,000 or something. But of course, my brain was very small at the time because I didn't know about a couple of things such as overkill, and if melee were to kill it, or if mage were to kill it, like there's all those different things you need to keep in mind when it comes to things dying, because overkill brings a tick faster, melee kill compared to projectile distance. Like, I didn't know all that stuff until afterwards I showed someone my results, and it was like, this is wrong. And I'm like, is it? It's like, yeah, this is what you should be getting. I'm like,
oh,
I see.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot from that because before then I didn't know shit about that. But of course my program, it's been messy, and someone could definitely do a better job. But it was a learning experience, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Like, for the overkill stuff, I was doing just TKs or something, and then I realized like, why does the XP drop of Supreme come up like almost instantly when I use a scythe compared to like a rapier or a tent whip? I don't know. And that is when I realized, wait, if the second hit, like if there are 2 hits, it dies a tick faster. It was like pretty insane when I found out. But yeah, as for Sims, like I can't say I tried because the way I tried it was like really inefficient. But yeah, it could be fun sometimes. But I like to approach it from the math side, really. But sometimes it's really hard.
I'd like to see more Sims come out in like the public sense, because I feel like Sims right now, they're more of a personal tool and they're just used by speedrunners.
Yeah.
The people who do it, like, props to them, because it's hard to make Sims. And I think Kirby's made Sims for stuff for Gauntlet. Because when he was making his Gauntlet video, he went over some of the Sims and be like, okay, so here's the probability odds of killing the boss in Corrupted if you have X amount of food. And of course, it's probably going to assume like you're playing like this. Maybe it'd be kind of cool to see like there's a chance you might make a mistake as well. But
he makes Sims for every speedrun method he does.
I don't think it's every speedrun method he does.
Yeah,
but
I think G Challenge M helped him as well, or was it Scotty that he helped? But I don't remember.
Maybe
but
Scotty,
yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I have seen like his work as well, like whenever I'm like AFK or like working or something, he always just gets to the changes first, because I work full time, so I can't always get it done quickly enough. And yeah, he knows a decent amount about the combat system as well.
And there was one more person who's I also seen done some sims too. The post sim results. I think it was Smork who was doing gauntlet sims for the boss.
What the fuck?
And he said something like to get X time, it's like a 20% chance. I think it was like sub 3 boss, which is kind of gross.
I think the Inferno community is also really into the simming stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know who does it though.
That also reminds me, there's a bunch of like Inferno tools now. Like there's that Zuck Fighter HTML thing that you can do on the web. I think it might be on GitHub.
Holy shit.
There's things to like simulate waves and it shows
line
of sight.
It's insane, yeah.
It's cool. I just wish there was just more open source stuff and just more of an open community coming together to create different kind of simulations that people can get their hands on.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I think at some point there was one more simulation I was working on, and this is actually a recent one too. Since I'm learning Java, I made a simulator for calculating damage on the core from Warden P2. Like different situations using like red carriers based on your scale. This is of course assuming raid level 400, and just seeing like based on what damage you're using, based on like carriers, how many DDS specs you do.
And then like optimize like the amount of specs or something.
Yeah, and also knowing like, okay, if there's this much HP left at this point, what if you throw in like an Elder Maul hit, and you could just quickly just throw in some numbers to figure that out, because you just add the damage onto that and just be like, okay. So it was just kind of a nice tool for me to be like, is there a way for me to, pass a phase a little bit sooner? But then again, I'm not crazy into speedruns right now, and I still need to make changes to that because it's not optimized to allow for user input. It's just like there's a few things I input, like is there red keys being used? Yes, how many? And then I do 2, and then I made this whole thing that just simulates the whole thing without me putting in a lot of like inputs. So it's just like I had to hard code a lot of stuff, and it's not designed to actually simulate the results where it's like, okay, use a rapier, then it'll actually do the encounter with the rapier. So it needs a lot of work.
Okay. Yeah. That sounds interesting, yeah.
If I somehow get that done and I get to a better stage, I'll probably make a GitHub and post it on there so people can pull it there and run it on their machine.
Right.
But who knows?
Yeah, that sounds sick.
But it's kind of cool to see all the nice and dandy stuff with calculators and simulators and all that fun jazz. It kind of shows how in-depth people are with this game.
Yeah. Personally, I really like just the combat system and just knowing everything about it. But yeah, obviously there are just way more stuff than just like defense, accuracy, max hit, that's like that type of shit. And so like overkill, projectile, and like what more? Like strategy and shit like that. I care less about that, and I care more about like the combat formulas and shit, the numbers basically.
The numbers are a big part of it, though. Like, of course, there's all the mechanics, but like, the numbers.
Yeah, I feel like what I do is just the groundwork for others to make even better stuff with it.
100%.
And yeah, that's what I like the most. Also about RuneScape, basically.
Well, I think most of us appreciate your work, sir.
Yeah, yeah, that's very kind. Yeah, as for other sheet stuff I've done is well, mainly bingo, I think.
Oh yeah.
Because I after I don't know when I started being events team. I think either 2019, late 2019, or early 2020 is when I joined the events team. and I joined during a bingo, I think, and I saw like the bingo sheets, and I feel like it was like the what's it called, infrastructure of the bingo sheet was really well done, because my like the previous guy who made the sheet stuff in Oblivion was Item, and he went also MIA, and yeah, it's not. I don't have a good. This doesn't really sound good, huh? Nah, but
Are you gonna go MIA next?
I hope not.
Is someone
We
like
have planned
locking
it.
up? Is someone locking up all of, like the great minds of RuneScape, putting all these sheets together and like helping them create some sort of super weapon or something? Is that what's going on? Is that why everyone's getting abducted?
No, because like as for Bitterkoek, I never knew why he quit. Like, I think the difference between me and Bitterkoek is that I actually have the stats, right? Because he was like mid level, and I think he just lost interest in both the game and like the yeah, and like maintaining the DPS calc. Whereas
Yeah.
Item, I never knew why he actually left, and there's like some really crazy rumor which I don't really want to talk about, and yeah, so to come back to the point about sheets is that he just sold bank and quit IRL is what Koekenpan says.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, for sheets, he had a really good infrastructure, and I feel like yeah, that there it is. He had a really good infrastructure with the bingo sheets, and I feel like I could improve that. And at that time, I didn't have access to the sheets because I was a newbie in the events team. So I just took what I got and basically created stats of like how people performed in that bingo. And I don't think I've actually released it, but it was good practice to like get like that done. And then there was like a lot of points where I was like, oh, this could be better, this could be better, and this could be better. So I started slowly implementing all of that for the next bingo. And it all started with the sign up sheet, where you just show everyone's who signed up, like their EHP and like how many hours they will play, and what else, like their roles, like the TOB role I added later, and like content preferences, and then from there you get the draft sheet, like the stuff that gets shown in the draft stream.
Mm-hmm.
That was the thing I made as well. And then like as for the bingo sheet, I just made it a little bit cleaner. Like it started with eventually you had to get more items for a bingo tile. For example, for Sire, you have to complete the entire bludgeon, so you have to get 3 Insires. And yeah, you had to make an entire album, and I didn't like how when the code gets changed in between the unsireds, it would invalidate the first screenshot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I wanted to have people submit the tiles separately, so they could always just have the insurance that the first unsired won't be just declined because because of because the code is wrong or something. And what else did I do? Like I just felt like some things could be presented more nicely, and as opposed to like the DPS calc, where everything is basically already designed, and I could only add like very subtle things like a dark mode or something like that.
Yeah.
I feel like the bingo sheet was like a really good way to express like other things, like have a nice little icon when you select the specific item. Like for Zora, you
Yeah.
pick a Tanzanite Fang and it changes the icon to a Tanzanite Fang, or like a font even. Like I could change that and making cells turn a certain color. I can pick and choose. Yeah, things like that. I felt like not just like the infrastructure and like the formulas and shit, but also the presentation of of the entire bingo sheet was also a fun part of making the bingo sheet.
I mean, user interface is pretty important whenever you're making stuff that people are going to interact with a lot, because
Yeah,
you
exactly.
can make something function well, but if it looks like absolute garbage puke, then people are going to look at it and it's like, I mean, it works, but it looks like shit.
Yeah, I feel like another issue during our bingos was like uh, I think it was the first couple bingos where people just held their drops, right?
Yeah.
And uh, when the event is about to end or they have everything, they just release everything, uh, and then we had like keywords change like every 24 hours or like 12 hours even, or even like a very random time. So people would like slowly release their stuff, and I feel like that's a good way to do it, but it feels like a little bit enforcing. So I feel like making it also pleasant to look at would also help in getting them to submit or something, or me releasing stats every 24 hours because they have submitted the items would also maybe encourage them to submit stuff as soon as possible, or like have be always like kind of active to confirm the drops, or have a good leaderboard system where you just see who got what. Was always could help with making rules bearable.
Yeah. I can see that for sure. Alright, so shall we move on to the Sheets one to kind of talk about something that bounces on, I guess some of it will be formula stuff, but I guess I'll say it in a second, but shall we move on to the next question?
All right, yeah.
Okay, so with ToA coming out, there were a lot of things and a lot of questions I had regarding some things like how the heck damage is calculated on P2 Warden. And
Right.
then turns out that you basically figured it out, at least the general idea of how it worked. And on top of
Yeah.
that, the shadow was bugged. And this was, of course, a collaboration between you and I think it was Vodka that said, yo, the shadow feels like dog shit on the back.
Yeah.
So you ended up finding out that the shadow was bugged in TOA because at what was it, a certain threshold, it should have splashed and it wasn't splashing, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So, talk a little bit about some of those in-depth findings in the game.
Right. So for ToA more than other content, really, because I soon realized this content isn't for me. Like maybe it's due to the content, maybe it's because of me not being interested in that type of part of the game anymore. But as soon as I realized that, I just started researching a lot about TOA, and one of the questions I've got was I don't know if it was vodka. Vodka was definitely in the conversation, but they just asked me like, why does the shadow feel like complete dog shit? And at first, like if I hear that, I'm like, oh yeah, it's just probably like between the ears, right? Like just you thinking it's shit because it is shit.
Placebo.
I don't know. Yeah, placebo, yeah. And so, but I feel like the times they've recorded, or like the amount of hits they hit, felt a little bit off, you know? Like it could be and especially with magic weapons, you can really tell the difference between splashing or not hitting and hitting an accurate 0.
Yeah.
So I feel like they must be right somehow. So I was like, how can you test that? And I had like different ideas, like maybe it's the same old the magic accuracy is way too high, so it overflows or something. And you know
mean
how
like
it
the
works.
T-bow parabola?
Yeah, exactly. Or where in Pokemon Gen 1 you had the underflow glitch, where if you have a little amount of experience, if you're like level 1, you would have actually negative XP, and that would overflow into max XP, so you're like level 100 if you gain a little bit of XP. But that could work the other way around as well. If you're, for example, your magic accuracy is above the max integer, it would also overflow to even less. And I thought that would be the case, but that wasn't. And then I figured, hey, there is like if I wear certain gear where my mage accuracy is -64 inside the raid, but outside the raid is -40 something else, I could test that. And the thing is, like, I've already noticed that the staff already like multiplies negative bonuses as well.
Yeah.
So it was really easy to hit that. So I decided, like, whatever, I just test that. And then as soon as I entered Sabak, I immediately hit, and I was like, huh? How is that possible? And like, because I feel like if it's on the stat screen, they would have implemented it correctly, because they would just take the stat that's in the stat screen, right? But apparently they separated that part, because like the part where it shows on the interface is different from just the combat formula itself, which was really weird. And just the sidetrack, I've also found out that temporarily, like, you know how Barrage worked.
Yeah, wasn't Barrage multiplied
the damage. Yeah, they fixed that, but they never fixed, or they did eventually fix, but at that point they didn't fix the accuracy part. So you could just go to Nilo or Maiden and just do a 3-way without changing into augury or whatever. Just freeze and catch every freeze. It was like kind of crazy. And but yeah, I found out that the negative bonuses are also like tripled or quadrupled. And yeah, I found out at that point it was pretty clear that it only tripled inside of ToA.
Imagine if you never found that, like how long it would have taken for the shadow to get
Yeah, I
fixed, because
think
everyone would have just assumed it was fine.
Yeah, kind of crazy how, yeah. Like, I think it's the accuracy part is pretty insignificant, except for like high info sabak.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny that that got found out with a collaborative effort.
Collaborative effort of Adka being like, why does this feel like shit?
Yeah, exactly. And As for the Warden P2, as I said, like I started like instead of just completing the raid, I just started just testing a lot of stuff, and the beta worlds helped as well. And I just started hitting things and just record and see what the max hit was. And I couldn't figure it out. I saw that like your max is like 60% or like 59 to 60% of your original max hit. And I never I struggled with it a lot, like especially when I hired the invocation and like the max hit changes even there as well. And I've tested like a lot of like different gear setup where the max hit is just the same, but like your accuracy just getting lower and lower and lower. And I probably did the same amount of hours you spent in zero rate level.
Dude, I
Warden.
don't even want to talk about how long I literally for like the last what was it? When I was doing tests, it was like 2 to 3 days of like non-stop resetting at level 0 Warden just to like get IDs, and then on top of that, I started having to like throw on invocations so I could like write notes about the attack speed of the Wardens,
Yeah.
and then getting this. The worst part was the sound IDs. That was the worst because
Right.
oh my god, there's too many freaking IDs, so I had to like get the IDs of the other NPCs as well, like the phantoms. So like once I isolated the ones from the Warden slams, then I just started isolating each and every ID using plugins to the point where now I have most of the important ones from Wardens. The only ones I didn't bother writing down was like when you proc skulls and he makes that loud. I don't know how to describe the sound, but it's like a loud pitch going like high and then down, like someone's dropping, for when the skulls launch out of his chest. I didn't get those.
Right, yeah.
But the main ones that I think are most beneficial are the final phase. There's too much noises in that. And just the slams to
the linings and shit.
Yeah, because I can make the slam attack just a quiet instead of a slam.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't scare anyone doing that.
I don't know. I didn't hear it.
Oh, no suppression for you, but everyone else on stream probably heard that.
Yeah.
But there was that, and then there was I tested out Red Curious to find out that Red Curious worked for P2 Warden. I didn't see many people do it, and obviously you wouldn't really do it with one Red Curious. You probably want to do it with 2 to 3 Red Curious on the team. So it's a niche case scenario. I learned that Warden's max hit scales based on its HP, and there seems to be a cutoff. I think the cutoff was somewhere around 40% HP, but don't quote me on that.
Is that for every attack?
This is only for P3 Slam. So
okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You've mentioned that, yeah.
So
I've been testing as well.
The max hit is 50 at 375, but with Insanity it gets a 20% buff, and it seems to get brought down, give or take like 30% or something. These aren't going to be exact numbers that I put in my script when I'm actually going to
because
do it.
didn't you mention in the ToA disc with the from Dio and stuff, where Insanity gives like the level 2 mechanics of
I got curious because I have all my stuff past level 0, and no one gave me an explanation as to why it's like I've seen it before where I've gotten to Warden and it's slowed down, like it's like level 0 and level 1, but every 400 raid I do, it's always like level 2 minimum with Baba boulders dropping down a certain rate. I'm like, why is that? So my hypothesis was there has to be an invocation, whether it's from the boss itself, or maybe it's because when an NPC hits, like any NPC at all hits path level 2, then it makes everything level 2. But then I thought to myself, I swear that shouldn't be the case. So when I was doing tests with Insanity on and off, I noticed, I was like, oh, that's why. Because even with everything level 0, Insanity's turned on. So by default, everything's doing this.
Yeah, and you know how level 2 gives, I think Was it 13%? I don't know. I don't remember the intervals. It was 8, 13, or something like that. And that could be like the reason why the slam attack gets stronger as well.
Maybe, but what I've noticed though is just like Insanity just gives a flat 20% buff to the slam. Because I tested at different invo levels. Of course, when you have Insanity on, you have to test it at 70 without it on, and then 70 with it on. And it seemed to be like, give or take a 20% buff in that aspect. Then I did a 300 run, 375 run, and I compared the max hits of waiting to see the max hit, because I had the max hit in theory, but I want to see the max hit before I write it down.
Yeah, I have that as well. I've made a sheet of all the max hits, or like every attack. I'm not done with it at all because it takes so much time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty interesting. Yeah.
I needed help because I didn't have enough supplies to tank out Warden Insanity 375.
Yeah,
so I had a friend come duel with me. I said, just give me supplies and die. Thank you. Goodbye. And it took me like, I think like 2-3 minutes of just tanking hits, and it was tough because I was using Yellow Curious and Spec Pots and healing up. When I finally saw that 60 from 375 Insanity Warden, there was a feeling of euphoria to just know that my hypothesis was correct. I know it's like information that might not actually help people, but it's like I wanted to know anyway.
Yeah, I'm the same with that. The fun part I found out with those max hits is that it also has the same mechanic with Guardians, where it does the roll first and then it does the damage multiplier.
Oh.
So if you have raid level 250 without any path levels, every hit will be doubled. So if it isn't the killing hit, most of the shit will just hit you for an even number, because if you multiply things by 2, it always end up being an even number, right? So yeah, that's a fun little detail I found.
Interesting. So that's for P2 Warden.
No, not just for P2 Warden. Like everything that scales.
Okay, I understand what you mean now. It's okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, everything that scales would just have that multiplier applied after they do the normal damage roll. And I think the scaling of how that scales is kind of like interesting how they did that, because Chambers was just the stats alone got increased.
Yeah.
So the downside of that is just that T-Bow became stronger the higher the scale became. And defense was also a problem, that it scales like to an absurd amount. And TOB was just HP, so that was also an issue, I think, because the more people you have, the easier it is to drain to 0.
So that basically means that if I were to find all the different max hits for an entry level Warden, then I can probably figure out all the max hits for 375 Warden.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. That might give me an idea then, because I remember when I was bringing it down, I think I saw the max hit going up to like a 16 on an entry mode Warden slam. So I think the max before was like 20.
Right.
Max 375, no insanity is 50, but entry mode I think it's 20. But that kind of gives me an idea of like how much it reduces it by. It's like give or take like 25%, 30%, somewhere around there. But
it's easier to test at raid level 0 then, because you don't get like clarded.
Rinsed, yeah. That is good to know, but at the end of the day, I'm still kind of happy just to know that as you do more damage to it, it does less damage, because then people can feel a little bit safer when they're not fighting against a full HP Warden. But now, if someone gets hit a 60, they won't be surprised because I have the information. I'll have the information out there at some point. They'll know like,
Yeah.
oh, so make sure your HP is above 60, or you'll get one banged, possibly.
Yeah. But yeah, going back to the question with the Warden P2, I noticed that 60% of your max hit is your max hit, and then I started like there is a min hit, right? So I started to look at the minimum hit, but I didn't want to use my own data because I didn't have max gear at that point.
Yeah.
So I just looked at streams, like I think Smork or like Pret's YouTube videos.
That's what I
which
did
is,
for some of the information regarding like how much damage you get hit from the Warden's attacks with like Quiet Prayers off. I looked at some videos to make a note.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, same. I did that as well for my max hit testing as well, and yeah, for I noticed like for mage, I saw like 32 as min hit, and 48 was then the max hit.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, let's count those two together because you know how the Fang works, where it's like 15% min hit and 85% max hit.
Yeah.
And like if you count those two together, it's 100%. So that's your base max hit, like your quote unquote true max hit. So when I did that, I counted those two together, like 32 plus 48. I found the 80, and 80 is like the max hit of the shadow inside of ToA. So I was like, wait, this is it, right? And then I also tested it for range because the Smork was doing 300, so it was still like good enough for the threshold. And I also saw that like if you add the min hit and the max hit, you come to your true max hit. And I was like, oh, so that is how it works. So I tested it even more, like testing the threshold for to hit it at the rate level 0, and it probably was like 45k max attack roll. And yeah, so basically how that works is you take the gear, your levels, stats, everything else, multipliers, and then yeah, you get a roll, and then that's 45k, and usually you roll that against the defense, and then whichever is higher, if it's higher, you succeed the accuracy roll, and if it's lower, then you don't. You get you get a 0. And yeah, so I noticed that that is like 45k, and I also noticed that like if you don't have augury on, you also hit that 45k with the shadow, because shadow is pretty broken.
Yep.
And yeah, but I never gotten so far as like how it scales down, or if like higher accuracy after hitting that threshold matters. But my hypothesis would be that it doesn't matter,
I think
because I don't. Yeah.
I think the hypothesis was that once you pass that threshold, you're good to go, and
Yeah.
then you're gonna have that 60%
Exactly.
to 40% range. But once you start going down, that's when you start seeing that drop off on your
Yeah.
your 60% max. It probably goes down like 59%, and then your min hit also takes a hit too.
Yeah, that's how basically how I found it to be working, and like it's probably like always every hit, like between the 40% and the 60% is probably uniformly distributed. So yeah, every hit is as common as the other, and I kind of like the mechanic. It's really difficult to find out, but
Yeah.
yeah, overall the mechanic is pretty good, and I kind of want, even though it's probably gonna be a hell for me to figure out for the DPS calc, but it's I would like to see that more. Yeah, see that more in like other pieces of content.
It's an interesting formula. I think it's one that people are still trying to get a grasp of how it works,
Yeah.
because I saw No Monkey's Max F Warden ToA video that he put out, and when he went to Warden, he mentioned how damage works in P2, and he said something along the lines of, extra accuracy matters because it affects your min hit, increasing your min hit, and it doesn't affect your max hit. And I was like, wait a second, this doesn't match up with what Coco told me. And I instantly went to his stream when he was live, and I was like, okay, this is what Koeken told me. And I felt like what you were saying made more sense, because of course you tested it for hours on end. I don't want to bash Gnome or anything. Gnome's my boy. It's just that I'm just trying to show that this is still something that needs to be looked at more, because people don't really know the answer yet.
Yeah, and the thing is that people are probably already doing it pretty well. Like they probably have the best gear already against Warden.
Yeah.
If they use the T-bow or Shadow, especially Shadow, because you can't really go wrong with Shadow.
The only thing is just trying to figure out what's the better option at like certain raid level milestones, because not everyone has a T-bow, not everyone has a Shadow. Obviously, Sang is probably going to be your go-to for mage, so that's probably figured out. But for something like range, because there's more range options, that's when it gets a little confusing, because it's like, Missouri Blowpipe, what's better, that or Bofo with Crystal Bow if you don't have a T-bow?
Yeah, so funny thing is, like, if you were able to get the threshold with Blowpipe, I was thinking of like Blowpipe being just really good there. Like, you only would T-bow like the first hit and the last hit, because you have a minimum hit, and the first hit is like nice to do at max distance.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Blowpipe would have been like insanely good, because it always hit that hit between 40 and 60% without accuracy checks. So yeah, it would in terms of like DPS, it would have been like insane. But it turns out that Blowpipe is not accurate enough to actually hit those thresholds.
Even like, is this at entry level or just like at higher raid levels?
Yeah, I think especially at higher levels, but I think I've seen it being kind of shit at lower info as well at 0.
I guess that means that Bofo's probably your best option, but it makes me wonder what's better, the crossbow or the blowpipe then?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I definitely know like what the threshold like around that point is for major range, but it's only at 0 raid level, so it's not. It takes a lot of time to just verify like every
raid level without knowing the formula. So
yeah, exactly. Like, I have no idea like how it scales down.
Yeah, it's something I need to test myself to figure out what is the best option, at least at a 400 raid level standpoint, just because that's something I'm going to be putting in my video, and I don't want to put out bad information, because if I do that, then I'll feel bad. So that is just something I'm going to have to test, go into like a 400, go through the raid, and then have like both Bofa and Blowpipe at the ready, and as well as like a ZCB, because ZCB is like go-to.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'd probably do ACB actually, because if you have the money for a CCB, then you probably have a Bofa. So I'll probably do the ACB, and I'll test that and see what's better, because you can look at the max hit, look at the min hit of the 60%, 40%, or whatever it ends up being, and then I would just look at the average hit, so the damage in between, and that'll tell me.
Yeah, that will probably work. Yeah.
And then I would just calculate that damage based on tick. So 5 tick weapon divided by 5, and then like 2 tick weapon divided by 2, and then compare the numbers, and that would tell me what the actual best weapons are. So that's going to be something I'll probably test tomorrow later in the night.
Right, yeah. That's probably the best way to do it at the moment, at least until like we find out
Yeah.
what it exactly is.
I think my grandma's coming to gank me pretty soon.
Oh,
Just the lights got turned on, so she's probably gonna be like, "I have food for you," and I'm like, "Okay, I'm finishing up." Yep, there she is.
okay. Yep.
1 second, guys.
Okay.
¿Qué pasa? ¿Y necesita ayuda? Okay. ¿Hay comida arriba? Okay, gracias. Grandma's just doing laundry. Never mind, I was wrong.
Okay.
¿Qué fue? I'll be quick, Coco. ¿Dónde aquí?
Well, this is the point where I can just
Arriba?
shout out the boys and say chocolate. Can you sing for us very well? No, I cannot. I am not drunk.
Arriba? Okay.
Shout out trump card, shout out rest board. Big O vocal cord. Oh no, oh no. The same fucking corner is getting ragged by my vomit.
Okay.
Why is this on follower mode now? What the fuck?
What the heck just happened? Why are people doing this shit? Off. Fucking rat Rixie, I should ban you right now, you bitch. Anyway, where was I before I had to help out my grandma?
We were talking about P2 Warden, I think.
Yeah, I think I left off saying what I was gonna do for tomorrow and test stuff, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's anything else we need to mention in that regard. I just thought that the mechanic is really cool, and I like to see more stuff like that because I feel like it's a really nice way of handling DPS, to be honest. It feels nice because you're never missing, because missing fucking sucks. But it also means
it's
that
really consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It also
I feel like.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go on.
I was gonna say it feels nice when you wear like something like Arms to Ancestral and you actually feel a bigger difference because the damage increase and the accuracy. So
Yeah. Another thing is, it would like remove the magic of like hitting completely shit or like always Marcusing or always max hitting. Sorry. So it shouldn't be like released everywhere, but like some parts may be like good. Like for example, Baba Waves. It could be at Baba Waves where you could if you hit it with the right style, you just hit always between those certain numbers. So you would probably one hit it, but yeah, that would be pretty good.
I hope to see more of it in the future. It seems like they're doing more stuff where it's like, for one, you remember how Olms would just absolutely ranch your cheeks? And now it's like, based on your protection prayer, you don't get ranch as hard and you can change your prayer before it comes out. It is kind of nice that they're doing that. Hold on, I gotta turn on my thing for my grandma.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Let her do the interview. Yeah. What up, Meep?
She just gave me instructions of what I gotta do on the washing machine.
Oh, okay.
But
I said, oh, okay.
God love it when my grandma pulls up when I'm like midstream or mid podcast. This is the second time she's made a guest appearance actually.
Oh, I'm honored. I'm really honored.
She actually came to say thank you for the DPS sheets.
Yeah. Imagine.
But
Yeah.
is there anything else outside of ToA that you might have found that was pretty cool, or was it just mostly those two findings in ToAs that
Well,
were
I found,
big?
yeah, as I said earlier, I found about the Guardians thing. Um, what else have I found that was interesting? Well, there's like one mystery I'm trying to figure out, like quite recently, is the crossbow max hit in combination with Slayer task. People have reported to me that the max hit is 49 instead of 51, which the DPS calc says it's 51, but the actual max hit is 49 in game. And I feel like no one ever reported to me that was wrong, and I know why it's wrong, but I'm now trying to figure out if it was ever wrong, or like if it was always wrong, or if it got changed recently.
Huh.
And yeah, it's kind of weird because the way it works right now is that instead of like the way multipliers work is that they stack multiplicatively. It's a hard word to pronounce. But so for example, you have Slayer Helm first, and then like you calculate the base hit, then you add the multiply it by the Slayer Helm bonus, then you round it down, then you have the next thing, and then so on and so forth. And for the wildy weapons, it was Slayer Helm, like 1.15, and then the wildy weapons 1.5. So it was like multiplying each other with rounding and shit in between as well. But the way they made it was that they added the multiplier. So it's actually a 0.65 multiplier for both Slayhelm plus crossbow, which is weird because I believe Solve still works like the way I've described it, like how I implemented it in the DPS calc.
Mm-hmm.
But the Slayhelm plus crossbow doesn't, which is, I don't know, it blows my mind.
Huh.
And that's what I'm currently kind of figuring out. Not trying my hardest because, well, I'm mainly playing Pokemon right now. So, and what else did I find? I found all the other stuff about like rolling after a damage roll or multiplying after damage roll, like leaf bladed battle axe. And those things are pretty hard to test because you have to just whack a monster for like an hour and then
Hours and hours to see if it matches your hypothesis.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas some things you just hit a dummy and then just see the max hit, and then you're like, okay, cool, it works how it matches the hypothesis. And yeah,
That makes me think of something, actually, now that we're talking more about this. So, I wonder if there's a min drop-off point for the Warden's P2 damage thing, where it's like, if your accuracy is so bad, it can't get lower than, like, X hits or something. Like, it can only bring
yeah,
it down
I think
to, like, drop by 20% or something. I don't know.
yeah, I tested as low as minus 64, and well, that's obviously the splash amount, and even trying lower than that, but I don't think it changes. I don't know when was the lowest I've seen. Let me check my data actually. Tombs of let's see. Yeah, I haven't tested the amounts in between actually, but at like minus 64 and lower, I've hit like 14 out of 25, which is, I don't know, 14 out of 25. Like,
Wait,
no, wait. Go on.
I was gonna say, can you even splash on P2 Warden, or?
No, you can't.
So you're guaranteed you never splash on it.
Yeah.
Huh.
But your hit was like a third of your actual max hit at that point, and the what's it called, min hit was like 15% of your actual max hit, so it's really bad.
So it does continue going worse and worse as your accuracy goes down. That's good to know then.
Yeah.
Huh. All right. Well noted. All right. Is there anything else that we want to mention before we move on to the next question?
No, not really. I think as long as the weapon is like either buyable or like tradable, I usually just try and test how the weapons work. The beta worlds are like a godsend for that at times, and it's kind of sad that we didn't get one for the updated ToA weapons. But yeah, it is what it is. Happens, really.
Yeah. All right. I'll move on to the next question. So, you are an Obliv staff member and a former member of the events team. So tell us a little about that experience, or that current experience right now, being a part of those teams.
Right. I think I'm fairly special in this case because normally staff members are just doing apps and like accepting trial list, doing coordinate like board reviews and stuff like that, discuss like other shit. And whereas back when I got staff, there was like a pretty clear gap that the sheets infrastructure was like not the amount of knowledge, because both item was the main sheets guy, he quit, and then Jack Jumanji took over, but he also quit and he still did some stuff. But yeah, it was pretty clear that like he probably didn't want to do it anymore. And then slowly people like McNeil became staff, and he did some help. And I think even at some point like winter days and like myself, when we weren't staff, were like helping as well with some sheet stuff. So and then you had me and events team like doing a lot of stuff for events team as well. And then like suddenly my because of some usual drama during an event, I got promoted to staff to either like be the guy with a staff position to coordinate events, while also like maintaining the sheets and like give stats and like things like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, my experience was like I would say like as staff, it's probably like pretty nice that I managed to get like to isolate like the things I probably don't like that much about staff, like rulings and doing applications and shit like that, and board reviews. I don't know. From like the things I actually do want to do, like sheets and shit. And formerly, I also really liked hosting events, but yeah, about that, things changed a little bit. So
Easter 2022.
2022 East, was that the levels bingo? I don't remember.
Bingo, yeah.
Yeah, that was the point where I just didn't want to do it anymore. Well, I like about the history of bingo. I think I don't know who came up with bingo. I think it was Gherkins actually who came up with the solo bingo, and then it slowly became the teams bingo.
Yeah.
And we added so much stuff with it as well, like drafting. We came up with partial tiles completion, and we added time trials, and like there was so much innovation at that point of the bingo format, and eventually, like I felt like bingo itself was like done pretty much like perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I kind of wanted more different bingo. Well, not bingo, but other type of events, like still like item collection, or because item collection is still like probably the best type of event you can
Yeah.
do. But I don't think people were like really open to it, even though like I don't know. I think in hindsight they probably would be open to it because at the end of the day it's just open RuneScape, get item, click bosses, and maybe you win, maybe you lose.
Yeah.
But I feel like people only wanted bingo, and bingo myself. I found like the amount of effort besides the sheets was like disproportionate from the things I do like about it. And as I said earlier about staff, that I'm very fortunate that I could separate like both the usual staff stuff with the sheets. I felt like with events, I feel like that just intertwined a little bit
It's
too
like you can
much.
kind of.
And
It's like you want to kind of stick with your niche, which is like, stick with the sheets and like helping out in that regard, while still like helping out in other places, but not as much. That makes sense. Because I feel like everyone has like their own niche and stuff to do, whether it's in the game or like outside of the game, which makes complete total sense.
Yeah, because people are unique, like each person is unique basically. And I think levels bingo was pretty fun concept actually,
I
but
liked it.
I think
It's just everything that happened in that bingo made me. I said, I think it was like to do dash. I was like, I don't know if I'll ever participate in another bingo again. That was just me, just being really annoyed with how shit was going on in our team because there was a lot of internal conflict. There were people that didn't want to participate with each other because they didn't get on the team and want to get on. Like, there were people flaming our bingo captain. You had people coming into my Twitch chat and antagonizing people on my team. So there was just a lot of things that left such a negative taste in my mouth on top of what ended up happening on my stream where Toy and some people had like confrontation and I'm just sitting there like, okay.
A complete awkwardness. Yeah.
And it's tough now because it's like I don't want to be that guy that doesn't want to like participate to help out X people or other people, but now it's like, okay, so now I know these two people will not play with each other, and that's kind of fucked.
Right. Yeah. Like, personally, I was it was just piling up of all the amount of issues. That issue. Like another issue which I know they didn't mean it because they are like obviously competitive and shit like that. Like I always have issues with the alt rule where you have to screenshot your entire desktop because otherwise you can have other people just play your alt accounts. And I find it really hard to enforce it because there will always be one guy who just happens to forget it, and it's just a really hard rule to enforce because you can do whatever you want. You can just have a guide of like change your hotkey to like screenshot your entire desktop instead of just your window, or just constantly like be in their Discord and just say like think about your screenshot of your entire desktop, etc., etc. But there will always be one team, one guy who just manages to not have a screenshot of like the entire desktop, and yeah, you just have to deal with it as fair as possible, and yeah, that's just very hard, especially if you're the only one online at that point.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like whenever I play bingos, I think I've only played like 2 to 3 bingos now. I try to commit as much time as possible. Of course, I want to have fun with the boys, but I also want to play my hardest. It's always an opportunity for me to get out my not the strongest army of alt accounts, but you know they do the job. Can do a little bit of budget port boosting. I still remember like staying up till like 5 or 6 a.m. with someone else who never court boosted before, and we're learning together, trying to get some kills. My Fire Cape army, and on top of that, I'm listening to fucking Despacito 2 meme edition at max volume, and then I watch all my accounts die one by one, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to fucking bed. I've been up till 6 a.m. Like, bingos make you play hard, and they're always good content, but...
Yeah, and like the voice chats are always like really fun to be in as well. Like, yeah, I had like the opportunity to just like be around, because well, it's always nice to have the events team guy in a Discord, so like I could always just chill and like meme the fuck out of them or whatever.
It just sucks when drama does end up coming up from it because people not ending up on their teams, and then it's like they don't want to play the amount of hours, or they're just going in a private Discord and absolutely flame the shit out of another like player. It's like that's also another thing that sucks. It's like if you're not a good captain, you're probably gonna get flamed to shit, and that also scares people from wanting to captain.
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's probably a good thing, but I think everyone in Oblivion, or like the majority, like 90% of Oblivion, probably wants to win and think they can win because well, there is always the RNG element and a draft element, and like no matter how good you are, how many hours you can play, you can always like win. So there is like a really competitive aspect of like the players, and I think that's on one hand that's beautiful because well, they are always like trying their hardest, but there's always like a little bit of like toxicity with it, right?
Yeah.
Of wanting to win, like trying, like finding like the like I don't know, like the things between the rules, of trying to like be smart about the rules or something.
Yeah. Speaking of, there's always a chance to win. I think one of the greatest things I've ever witnessed. I wasn't playing in the bingo at the time, but I did end up helping in regard to it. Was the Herman Miller Andes comeback?
Oh yeah, that was so good.
That was one of the craziest comebacks I ever saw because the one team was in the lead, and I don't exactly remember what happened that led to them just like falling off as hard. I heard like a bunch of people like basically went out, like went to bed and shit. Like they didn't play as seriously.
Yeah, they eventually like kind of crashed, and like I think they had like one tile left, and yeah, and then like their best players just started going out or going to sleep, and that's when the other team would just slowly coming back. And I think that's like things like this is when I think of, hey, I can like make something that illustrates their comeback. And I think that's the point where I just started adding a timestamp on when they get the item, right? And then they can just, and then I can make a graph of like people like of the points, like how they got increased. And yeah, I think that's the beauty of it. Like things happen in bingo, like for example, Luke's team Swagger got like insanely unlucky at hard mode
Oh
top
my
in
god, I
the
remember
levels
that.
bingo. You
Yeah.
can just show that with the percentage of the drop rate compared to the hard mode top KC.
That was fucked, man. I saw that. I was like, that's fucked. But
Yeah, that's not not the initial thing. I think it was George Cooper who got unlucky at Hydra. Is
oh
what
no.
it was the reason why I made that. I think I'm not sure what started it,
I
but every sheet, like the stat I show, had like a backstory behind it. I feel like.
Yeah, so in my first bingo, DB was on my team, and he was stuck at Sarah for like over 1,000 KC to get a Sarah drop. I think it might have been the ACB or the Hilt, one of the two. He didn't get it.
Right.
He was stuck at Sarah for the
Yeah.
whole bingo pretty much. After he was like going hard, getting like Sire was done and some other stuff was done by him, and then he got hard stuck at Sarah. And I was just sitting there like, every time I even think of Sarah at bingo, I think of him.
Yeah. And he had that like I think 2 or 3 bingos in a row where he was the Hydra man. And I think he got a little bit unlucky at that.
Man, oh man, it's unfortunate to hear.
Yeah, but you always have those stories where like you get hard stuck at a tile and like what you gonna do, like, and someone else does like 1 kill of Sarah and then they get the ACB and you're like, oh great, I'm free, but at what cost? Because I also started to implement a way to streamline the MVP points, right?
Yeah.
So you had to allocate certain drops to a person.
Yeah,
That
that's
was yeah.
Bingos make for some good moments. I think at some point I actually went to captain in one when I had more free time, because the worst thing I could do, at least in my eyes, is to captain and have like no time at all. So mostly in the future, because
Right.
I would honestly love to do it, just because I've always tried to train myself to be a little bit of a jack of all trades in most aspects of the game. Not to say I'm super good at everything, but I can do everything at a okay level. Mediocre at best. That's the way we'll put it. Mediocre at best.
Yeah, and I think you would be able to like encourage people as well, like be a good leader as well. I feel like, at least.
I do my best to make sure the boys have a good time. I never want to have people sad, and worst comes to worst, if we lose, we lose. As long as we made a little bit of coin, make some good
Yeah,
memories, make some good
exactly.
memes. That's all
Yeah.
that matters to me, and I would probably be joined with my homie ToA if co-captain's a thing. So
Yeah, yeah, that's another thing. Like, co-captaincy was also like a thing we started implementing, like rank up points for captaincy and stuff like that. Pretty, yeah.
I think the other niche I'd bring to the table is that I know for a fact people despise Gauntlet. So I'm always at the raise, like, if no one wants to do Gauntlet, I got you guys covered. I need to make my way to 1k KC after all, because I enjoy it.
Right. Yeah. You see, yeah, Gauntlet is always fun. Like, the fact that you can preload a chest, right?
Yeah.
I initially thought like, that's kind of weird, but we can't really do anything about it. But the fun part about that is that people who never done Gauntlet, like myself, for example, or like someone else, who never really do Gauntlet, have to do Gauntlet to optimize like the extra rolls, right? Because it doesn't matter how shit you are at Gauntlet if you just get the completion. So yeah, I think initially I thought like, well, yeah, wasn't really a big fan of like preloading chest, but we couldn't really do anything about it, so we just let it go. To like, well, that's actually pretty fun dynamic actually, and yeah, that's how I think of a Gauntlet preloading chest.
All right. I think we could probably move on to the next question, which is just talking about some of your contributions in the Gear Discord, because I mean, I look at that Discord. There's a lot of useful information, but I'm not sure about like what's going on behind the scenes. I think now there's something that says thank you to X person for helping create the guide, and they put the information themselves. But just want to hear it from your words.
Yeah. So initially, when we started Gear Discord, was like Gherkins when I don't know if you're ever gonna do a podcast with the Gherkins, but I'll summarize it really quickly.
Maybe one day.
He wanted to share the gears. He had like a different channel in a different Discord where he shared all the gear setups with of certain bosses, and then he eventually thought, why not make a Discord out of it and make it different channels and invite the people to that Discord, and then he realized, why not just make it public? And yeah, then I joined like relatively quickly, become like third on the member list, but that's mainly because other people got kicked eventually or left the Discord and by accident. And yeah, I quickly became admin because we're good friends, and well, yeah, and I knew a thing or two about gear.
I mean, after all, you know a lot about how the calculations work for damage.
Right, yeah, and a little bit about damage taken. And yeah, at first we knew like a lot about it. Like we're like a jack of all trades ourselves as well, and we just added all the gear stuff for every content. And then later on, like when we all got a little bit burned, we just ask other people. And I myself mainly only focus on the DPS calc, and like the channels I still have, I just try to keep it up to date, but not doing a really good job with it, but try my best.
I mean, it's tough when you have so many things you need to do. Like I have to update a lot of my my sheets for chambers. The only thing that I actually fully updated with regards to the changes to CM is my prep sheet with new numbers, and I think for the most part it's relatively accurate on what you want to prep restore wise. But the Vang doc completely outdated. There's a lot more stuff I need to keep in mind. Like now, person on Mage Vanguard needs to keep the melee Vanguard's HP low so people can dump ZCB specs on the Mage Vanguard. It's just like,
holy shit,
yeah. There's a lot more to Vanguards now. It's like a whole different procedure. And then I have to get like different clips for banking because banking's different with people using Shadow for Vespula. So it kind of outdated my banking video in some aspects. But that's how it goes.
But that's always like gonna have like I rather have things like that just be outdated than just have no gear or no significant gear increase, significant gear improvements at all. So we don't have to do these type of stuff. Yeah, it's always fun to have like a new meta coming up.
Even then, whenever I do put out guides, I always try to include some stuff that kind of opens your thinking a bit more. Not just to the guide, but to different concepts. Like my banking video teaches you a lot about inventory management and teaches you how the Chambers Bank works, so that when something does go outdated, you still have like ideas how to get around some of the problems.
Yeah. So yeah, to have people still think, basically.
Yeah. Plus, you never know what kind of stuff people can come up with whenever you put out any information, which is why I like showing people stuff, because, like I said, I do some really dumb shit, with invulnerability and pnex and all that stuff, but someone can make some crazy method that might be useful in the future for some crazy challenge. So that's why I always like to show off some dumb shit.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, that's basically my my weight in the gear Discord, and yeah, I it just comes back to like me wanting to help the community, kind of.
fair. Okay, so I think I'll move on to the next question then, which is you've seen some of the recent pitches regarding stuff like Blue Inferno, that new Blood Bow that is getting pulled. I don't know if it's passed yet, but the mid-tier boss with that. And I'm just curious, what's some of your thoughts of some of the stuff that they pitched in the game jam, as well as some of the stuff that they're saying is going to come out?
For game jam, I think the most interesting thing I've seen is the Blue Inferno, but I don't know much of the details of it.
I can give you kind of a TLDR about it.
Yeah, sure.
So it's Inferno. It's a much faster paced Inferno, though, so it's like shorter. They did say there's going to be less of an emphasis on like, I think it was like positioning and prayer flicking, and more just like trying to solve stuff. I forgot exactly what they said in their words, but the one thing I know for sure is that there's modifiers as you complete waves that kind of buff up the enemies, and after you complete a boss wave, you get a modifier for yourself, which adds kind of like a roguelike element to it. Because there's games like Binding of Isaac and Nuclear Throne and some other games where it's like it plays differently every time because you're not sure what kind of buffs you're going to find. So it lets you play in different ways based on what you find. Maybe they could do something like, so in this one, you have like a kind of melee build, so it optimizes using melee for Blue Inferno. Or in this one, you have some like really good mage perks. And then you could even have it where some of those mutators work together to create like a super mutation. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I think the reason I like Chambers over the other two raids is that like at first, like before like Giga Scouting was a thing or CM, is that the raid felt a little bit more dynamic.
Yeah.
And like that like the unpredictability part of it was like pretty fun. Like next room could be something else, and you have to adapt to it. And I think if that's how it's gonna work, that could be pretty fun. Like gain a mage buff, and you have to do solve it like entirely differently. That would be pretty good. As for other stuff, like I think the way they changed the Sarai bow into the Blood Hunter bow, I don't know the name, Blood bow thingy. Yeah, I think it's a significant nerf enough for it to be released from a master quest, but I don't understand the blog again, because I think it's still what I said earlier about just letting the CMs do the blog. And yeah, where just certain details get like missing.
It's hard to understand it when you read it. What I got from it, because when I looked at it the first time, I was like, I had so many questions. It's like, so is there some sort of priority system, or is it like RNG when it's trying to decide if it hits like 3 targets or bounces back to the first target? I'm just like,
yeah. I think people still kind of overrated at Inferno, because the thing is that they go from middle square to another middle square, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you can see the problem. If you have a major, the middle square is like big on the northeast middle thingy, and then it goes to the other middle over 3x3. It doesn't hit that middle square of the 3x3. And a lot of NPCs are 4x4 and 3x3. And the way they've pitched the middle square of a 2x2 is wrong as well. Because they said it's the northeastern square. But for 2x2 is an exception, where it is the southwest square. Yeah, it's really weird. I don't know how it works. But that's how it works with Scythe and Sea Halley.
Unless they decide to change it for some reason.
Yeah, I really don't want to want them to do that, because I really hate the what's it called, the trend of them just changing how the game works to match their blog they wrote.
Yeah.
Just because they didn't know how it works initially, and I feel like a lot of those changes happen a lot recently.
I think the Fang controversy was probably like one of the biggest ones.
The what? The Fang?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's the biggest one. Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll see. Like how I see the bow right now is it'll probably be a useful tool for one BA, and then two it might be good for split nibs. You'd still want to bring chins because I think chins would be good in the situations where you can get close to the blob. But now it gives you an opportunity to, if you're too far from the blob, you can send a bow shot, and then you kind of get close to it, and then you'll like do a hit with your blood bow, hit split nibs or not split nibs, the split blobs, because that's a big issue.
Yeah. That would be pretty good. It's probably really good against one by one NPCs, because you don't have that restriction of things being too big for it to hit.
Might be good for it might be this idea where you want to like try to clump stuff together as well in Inferno now, like try to put two bats next to each other and then kill them with the bow. So
yeah, at least the main concern was that you could just like have a major in front at the pillar, and then like hide behind the pillar of the ranger being behind the pillar, so you couldn't. So the ranger couldn't see you, but you can AoE to it with the Z-bow.
Yeah, I saw the original clips of people in the beta world using it, and people were getting some insane splits with that bow. It was disgusting.
Yeah. I don't think it will be that good, but it will be alright. But like, yeah. And the what's it called? Saturated heart or something?
Yeah, the heart.
Yeah. I always wanted, like, the issue with mage, I feel like, was that you have in chambers you have like 120 mage, and in ToA you have 125 mage, and that's such a big difference from 109 mage that also drops down. Like, I feel like that's so much worse than like we have with even range, like even
112
and 118. And I feel like that's a really good update, that it is better now, like 112 as well, but also the divine effect. So yeah, as standalone item, I think it's really good to like close the gap between chambers, ToA, and outside of those.
Yeah.
But am I happy that it's released from a mid-level boss? I don't know.
The other thing is that they're adding a new potion too. I don't think it's as strong. They like slightly nerfed it so that it gives you a reason to use the heart. But they're adding another potion, and I'm wondering if this puts us a step closer to the eventual creation of an overload recipe in Old School RuneScape. Because I think they said they wanted to do one, but they're adding all these different potions to actually use it. Like we have the potion that came from ToA, which restores your stats. But the only issue with that is it fucks your divine. I don't know if it still does that, but like if you...
It still does that, I think.
Ah, man, because it'd be such a good potion for chambers speedrunning, at least normal chamber speedrunning, because you would slam a brew, and you wouldn't have to like set restore. You could just let the remedy run its course. But I don't think it's worth losing your divine over it now.
Yeah. It's funny because it's technically a restore potion, right? So I sent a bug report to Jagex, like, you can't potion share it. And you know probably where I'm going with it. Like,
Oh
I wanted them
no.
to fix the potion share part first before the divine removal, but they have done neither. But yeah, I wanted them to fix that part so I could just potion share when I see people start balling at TOB or something. They just
You
drop a
fucker.
pot share.
You fucker. That's actually so troll.
Yeah, but they never fucking they've never probably never implemented the pot share part.
Damn. I remember one day we were sitting at 416, me, Toy, and some others, and we literally sat there just throwing eggs at people and teleothering people, and they were not happy with us. It was so good. So many people were pissed at us that we were having the time of our
Yeah.
lives just doing that shit. We did, I feel like an
Yeah.
hour straight or something.
Yeah, it's sometimes like fun to just troll a little bit.
Yeah,
But yeah,
we do a tiny bit of trolling. Nothing more than that.
we do
We
a
don't
little bit of trolling.
we don't talk
Yeah.
about the 416 Phoenix shenanigans, which may or may not have involved many lives being
Oh.
lost at a bloat. Maybe an officer outfit was worn during that, but I don't know. This is just all hypothetical. All hypothetical.
Yeah. Are there other content that's gonna be released?
They mentioned Wildy revamp, and they showed some stuff of that. It was like a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Too.
We all know about the Void Waker being like pretty powerful.
I thought that when they first introduced it, I thought more about it. I was like, this is gonna replace claws. And then
Yeah.
I made a video on it and did a little bit more digging to look at the calcs and stuff, because it's a static damage average.
Yeah.
And
Basically, yeah.
it turned out it wasn't as good as I thought. The only place where it seems to be really good compared to claws is ToA, and that's just because a lot of stuff is tanky, namely not Bava, but like Kefri, super tanky, and Obelisk is somewhat tanky, and Warden at the end is somewhat tanky. So I wanted to kind of look at that, and it looked like the Voidwaker is actually not a bad option for ToA. Tom, Claws still remains king, just looking at all the calcs
because
there.
of depth. Yeah.
And then Chambers, because of NPCs having damage reduction in situations where you want to use a melee spec, it makes it where Claws is just better, because you're not going to Void Waker a Vasa Crystal. You're not going to Void Waker Tecton. You're not going to Void Waker Old Melee Hand. You're going to do reduced damage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I haven't thought about that. Like, because I just think of like it being like what's it called? High damage output, 100% spec, and minimum hit. Like, those three shouldn't really exist in old school, like, together.
And it is existing, but even then, it feels in PvM, it fills a niche. It seems to be really, really good at God Wars as a spec weapon, except for Arma, because obvious reasons. But at Nex, it's kind of a weapon that you can use where you don't need to use the ZCB, since melee is kind of the meta now. So you don't have to bring like those 2 switches. That's an extra potion you can bring. That's one thing. It's consistent, so you never have like a bad blood phase if you're like trying to dump specs and your ZCBs keep missing. And you also don't lose HP. That, and also you have better spec economy, because you'll ZCB, you'll use the altar, and sometimes you might have some lingering spec left over because like you're not using that 25% spec sometimes, which sucks. With this, you can double spec and then get another double spec using the altar.
Yeah. Well, the minimum hit part is kind of interesting as well, because like you could just have an NPC be like in critical health, and then you just spec and then you kill it.
Ooh, that's actually a good point. That's a very good point. It's like a guaranteed way of
Yeah.
killing stuff. Huh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. Like it, it's probably less broken than I thought it would be, because I was like really advocating like it is pretty broken for where it comes from. But yeah, I think immunities gives a really good nerf for it.
Yeah. I originally thought it was like, okay, this is the end of Dragon Claws, but as I did more and
Yeah.
more research into it, with what we have
Yeah.
right now, it fills a niche because there are just some NPCs that are just tanky to the point where claws are just not so good. And then we had the
Right.
Fang kind of come in, and that kind of helped fill a niche somewhat, but it still didn't feel like that weapon that was, does a lot of damage. So now we have this weapon that is super good for high defense targets, but for low defense you'd still use claws, and then like medium defense you can still use claws. This is just like, this shit is a tank and it's vulnerable to magic attacks, like Corp.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like they shouldn't have buffed both crossbow and Figueroa's chain mace, because they were already really good weapons.
Yeah,
Maybe with the Slayhelm shenanigans, it's probably not as good as I thought it would be, but I always consider that weapon like mostly off task. So um, yeah, I feel like it's kind of weird that those items get buffed alongside with all the other stuff it would drop.
yeah.
But yeah, I also I don't know if I'm pessimistic or about it or something, because uh, to me, like I always compare like the strength of a weapon with the content they release, and if that's like mismatched, I always be like a little bit cynical or critical about it.
You shouldn't be getting a
So
T-bow from a goblin.
yeah, exactly. And the fact that like my expectations of the ability rework isn't really high, and I don't think that's probably deserved, but that's how I'm in it, and that's why I also think that the weapons or the rewards of it might be a little bit overpowered.
I guess. I think they're implementing all these different specs and stuff with the intent of PvP. But the thing
Right.
is, we're PvMers. We always try to look at it from both aspects. Like, if VLS were to come in and be usable for PvM, it could probably be a
Yeah.
good weapon for a lot of stuff in PvM.
Right.
Like, off the top of my head, trying it out Vasa Crystal, oof, that shit would be nasty. But
Yeah.
that's how it always
Actually, it
goes.
was a point where you could use it against for PvM
But the
in beta
VLS?
worlds. Yeah.
Hmm. How was it?
I it was alright, but I think nowadays you would probably still use claws.
Probably, yeah. It's only in a situation where you wouldn't want to use claws, or you'd want to like use more of your spec, maybe like at Vanguards.
Yeah.
Would it be more
Yeah, maybe
beneficial?
well, I think it's 25%, so you could
Yeah,
probably do like ZCB into VLS spec and then just poke it afterwards.
yeah. Maybe that might be the
Something
case.
like that. Yeah.
Man's already inventing the meta for whenever they make a new VLS for PVM. Easy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, like and like Statius Warhammer was also a thing back then.
I remember
Or in the day.
pre-EOC how it was doing it off of max defense though, and not current.
Yeah.
Yeah, like current
Yeah.
defense.
Well, the funny thing is that they on release Dragon Warhammer worked like that.
I remember that it worked off of
Max
max
defense.
defense.
Yeah.
That was
Which is
broken.
a funny sidetrack, because I well, maybe we can get to it later about like bugs and shit like that.
If you want, we can probably move on to bugs unless there's more you want to talk about regarding the content pitches.
Uh Oh yeah, about the scepter. The scepter is pretty interesting because it becomes like the mage dragon warhammer basically, and
It's like a
I don't know.
BGS, I think, because
Yeah,
it's based on hit, I think, right? Or is it if it hits you,
no,
then
it's
it deals you?
if you hit it drains a certain amount. I think it's 15% mage and
So
defense maybe.
if you hit a 1, then it drains that amount that they said it was draining.
Uh,
Because I thought it was a
Let me check.
BGS.
No, it is. I don't think so. I thought
Holy shit!
it was just percentage, but it was just that percentage. I think. I think it's a curse scepter. Also, the names they made of it is just gone worse, really. Let me see. Special attack. The curse scepter has special attack which consumes 50% of your special attack. Increased accuracy, and upon successful hit, it also drains target defense and magic level by up to 15%.
Yeah, so when I saw the up to, I was thinking like
I
it's
think.
based on the hit, but
Oh, and then I don't know. I haven't tested it that much. It
I,
might be just BGS still 15%.
yeah, I mean, it still opens up opportunities where you might be able to use it to like its full effect, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think because it has like the 50% damage accuracy boost, it kind of helps for outside of wilderness applications.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see what stuff people use it for. Like, I thought about Zuck as a joke, but I'm not sure if people would actually use it for Zuck. I mean, for it to nerf it
Uh,
for that encounter for as long, you'd have to bring a lot of mage gear though, I think, right? Or was it accurate just an anti to that?
yeah, but you would use like something to DPS Zuck, right?
Oh, of course. You hit it with the spec and then you DPS like T-Bow afterwards.
Oh wait, yeah, because it also drains defense.
Yeah,
Right.
and your bow max hit isn't going off of Zuck's magic
Yeah,
level anyway because
exactly.
it's so low. It's going off of his accuracy, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, the accuracy is super high, yeah.
So, guess
Right.
we'll have to see. I guess it'd
Yeah,
be good
that's the
for
only.
Obelisk and ToA.
Right, yeah.
That'd be
Oh
good for
yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, we can, yeah.
Oh, that actually reminds me. So, I tested something as well, and it made me think a bit more of what we were speaking about regarding the Warden damage accuracy thing.
Yeah.
You can drain Warden's defense, P2 Warden's defense, by 20 levels.
Right. So it's just I think it's the standard amount, and then they just adjust it depending on the NPC.
Yeah, but I wonder if when you do drop it by its 20 levels, because you're guaranteed to hit with any melee weapon. So if you use a Dragon
Right.
Warhammer, you would roll your. I would assume it would go through, but I'm not
Right.
sure. I know with Red Curious it works, BGS it works, but it makes me wonder if it's worth doing so just
Mm,
to increase your max hits maybe at a higher rate level, but I'm not sure.
uh, yeah, maybe for the uh, I don't know, cause you would forego DDS specs for it, and um, even at 500, I think the nerf for range isn't that much
Yeah,
if
probably
you are
doesn't
in
matter as
max.
much unless you're using like blowpipe or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh well, the option's out there for anyone who wants a fucking BGS before it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I don't know. Could work.
All right. I think we can. This isn't on the script, but if you want to talk about some bugs real quick, we can do that.
Right. I always like. I don't know. Like. I find it kind of weird that some bugs are just literally the item itself, just not functioning how it's described to be. Right.
Yeah.
Because I think like if something gets released into the game and like accidentally somewhere across the map a T-bow spawns. I mean, like, okay, that shit happens, but like that's not something you can account for, right? That some random moderator added a T-bow spawn and it got saved into the map and yeah, it got accidentally into the game code. But I've seen like a lot of updates where I think that is literally how the weapon is or like the item is supposed to work, and it doesn't work like that. Like I don't know if I think last update was with the charges where it just depletes
Oh
all
my
your
god.
charges.
Yeah, I saw that. I wasn't playing at the time because I was busy, but I was watching streams and I was hearing about this. What the fuck is going on? Why is it
Yeah,
doing that?
and then there's like the divine room pouch. You could finally what's it called? What's the thing? The protection? Uh, like
Parchment it. You can parchment it.
yeah, parchment. Yeah, parchment. And the parchment itself couldn't hold 4 runes, which is literally the divine rune pouch. Like I don't get it. Like even the Dragon Warhammer was just uh in uh in the blog. It was initially pulled as 30% of the max defense because it's just a copy paste of the Stasis Warhammer and
Was that
then
what they
just
pulled it
nerfed that.
as?
Yeah, and then well, it was in the blog, and then they just people said, well, it would be too overpowered because it doesn't degrade.
Yeah, that and the fact that it would just kind of devalue BGS completely,
Yeah,
which
right.
I don't know how people feel about that. I mean, it's a god sword. I think it's a good spec weapon. So just to see this
Uh,
60
I think
attack item come in and do that, I don't know.
yeah, I think back then like defense training was like really not a thing. Even
Yeah.
pre EOC, like because the Stasis Warhammer was like a degradable, people weren't really training defense as much as we
Yeah.
do in old school.
Well, the
And
other thing was also because BGS spec cost at the time was 65% and eventually passed the
well,
power
it was
50% too.
even worse. It was 100% at
What?
start,
Oh
and
my
then it
god!
yeah, and slowly they reduced it to 60, and then now to 50, which yeah is a lot better. And yeah, so they wrote in the blog like, okay, we changed it to 30% of the current defense, and somehow that just slipped through the cracks, and still.
Sorry.
Oh, no problem. Somehow that got slipped through the cracks and like still got released as how it was like with the Stasis Warhammer, and I think it was early 2019 where they released Kebos and Cohen. No, not well, Kebos, yeah, and
Cabasol
like all
lands.
the farming guild and Hydra and things like that. That update was a shit show, and uh, I mean there was another shit show update with the achievement diaries, but I'm willing to forgive that because that was 2015 and this is 2019. But they had like Dragon Hunter lands where they just literally copy pasted the stats, the damage, the modifiers of the Dragon Hunter crossbow, because well, it's basically the same thing, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it would it means that they were like more powerful for no reason, and shit like lands just working as a spear for corp, with so you could bring Lance plus D Defender or a Phoenix Defender, and it would be better than Z Spear. And like Brimstone Ring being like completely broken, where it just kept on draining defense or magic levels of the thing.
Oh, it's 6:21 p.m. I thought it was 6:20.
But yeah, it's like I feel like a lot of this stuff would happen a bit less if they, tested a bit more thoroughly. But I'm not sure what the whole QA test process is like.
Yeah, I think they don't do code review for their QAing. They just kind of like brute force it, like the way we would probably do it. And I feel like there's a little bit of a flaw in that method, because they don't have to be like insanely good coders, because, well, then they would be promoted to a dev, right?
Yeah.
But it would be nice to just have them see the code, and then they see, hey, it says 1.3 or like 30% instead of 20%. How does this work? Or like it has over there you see the number 4 for the multiplier, and instead of it 3. Well, how's that? Like,
so
things like that. Like,
I am currently in like a coding boot camp to learn to be a QA tester, and they basically teach you, like, at the start they were teaching me Java, so I'd have an understanding of the code, but they're primarily teaching me different automation tools so I can, test web applications. So yeah, they're teaching all that stuff, but now I have a basic understanding of if I want to develop something in Java, I could do it, and I could look at code and be like, I think I might have an idea of like what's causing it to break, but at the end of the day, it's like I'm mostly there to just test stuff. But having a basic understanding of what you're looking at is important, I'd say.
Yeah. And I think it was in a interview with Shawnee and Modreach, ex-Modreach. That was a really interesting interview, by the way. Where Modreach said that the QA testers, or the current QA testers, don't really want to do that.
I see.
Really, yeah.
Well, I don't know. It's because I'm only doing QA testing right now because I want to kind of like, get into it, and then eventually, if I like it and I want to go further, then I'd probably get into developing. So you were kind of correct in that sense. Like, if you're good with the code, then you might as well become a developer. But
yeah, I think most of the mods who are devs now, like, started at QA. I think, was Kieran starting at QA? I think he did, and then he rapidly became like one of the best devs.
I mean, he created some of the greatest pieces of content to grace the game. So
yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's just weird. I accept a lot of bugs in this game because, well, it's a weekly release shit, and I've seen worse because I'm a Pokemon fan, as you probably know. And
I've seen some of the streams.
Last year was not a good game there. Yeah, that shit was more buggy than a average Jagex release. So yeah, I don't know. And I think I can see a lot through, like, even T-Bow and the Max Cash shit. That's that's probably like whatever. But I mainly have issues with like bugs that just, I don't know, doesn't, like, that just mismatches like the exact thing you developed.
Another thing that I kind of wonder is, like, for some of the tasks, how they go about testing them, because we saw a lot of bugs when it came to the release of ToA CAs. I felt like, okay, so they have tools to probably be invulnerable, So for the Zabak one, they can just, God mode on, and then hit Zabak, maybe like one shot or something, see if a task procs or not, right? So that's an easy way of testing that. And then you could probably do the same thing, like run through stuff and like kill things and test it with different gear sets. So they have tools to kind of accelerate going through like the QA process. So it just makes me wonder, like, what are they doing that leads to some of these bugs coming in? Like the discrepancies for tasks procking, like you need to be slower to actually proc the perfect task for some of them. I think it was like the Zabak one. It's like you need to make sure that you're doing it like over a minute or something, or there's something else.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I think someone reported it, and instead of calling it a bug, they just suddenly said like, I think it's a typo, where they just they just don't want to call it a bug, so they don't offend them, you know?
Bro, that's a bug.
Yeah, it is a bug, but yeah.
Another thing was, okay, so there was a task that last night I was scrambling on my CA list because at the start of my CA journey, the task was you had to proc the other Warden, so you do Tumikin P2, just so you'd have Kefri and Akka P3, and you had to have the invocation Stay Vigilant and Airstrike on. So I was preparing myself at some point to do it. So I look at my list and I'm like, where's the task? I haven't done it yet. And it turns out when I was first doing my CA tasks, it was bugged. And it didn't matter which Warden you had turned on, because if you had those invocations on, which I did, and you did the other Warden, it didn't matter. You got the task anyway. So I'm like, are you joking me? Yes! I was scrambling. I was like, am I just going insane? And it was never a CA task in the first place? I don't know, I was baffled.
Yeah, what's it called? I think there's also a lot of redundancy in the task they made for ToA CAs, I think. Let me check. Because I think in Grandmaster there's like 2 speed tasks, and one of them is faster than the other, obviously. But I don't see really the point in like having 2 Grandmaster speed tasks.
You should probably just have the one and tier them, unless it's like different scales. Then it makes sense. But if it's the same scale, then no point.
Yeah, the Tombs Speedrunner 2 and 3 are both Grandmaster.
And is one team size? I know one of them team size based, but the number 2, is there a team size attached to it? There is?
No, there's any.
Okay, I can understand it then, but if it's any, it's just like, if you do the 8-man one, you get that one. Maybe you should have had it for a different scale. It would have been kind of nice to have different scales. I know people might not have been a fan of there being like multiple scales for it, but like, I don't know. I felt like solo is a scale that a lot of people do. It makes sense to have a solo time. That's one thing. And number 2, 4-man and 5-man are some of the more preferred metas. So for like a big team test, that would have been fine too. Like having like solo and then 4 to 5-man, because that's typically what people like doing. And instead, no, let's just have one for any scale and then have an 8-man one. Like, what? An 8-man one? You know how annoying it is to get 8 people together? This shit's so hard.
Yeah. I don't know why they did it.
I've done it. I've completed it 3 times now. But even then, getting 8 people together is a hassle. So I doubt they're ever going to make a change to it. I would love if they either changed it or made alternatives. Like maybe, okay, so if you complete the time in a 5-man, or you complete a time in like a 3-man, and you have different times for it, then it completes the task. But I'm not sure how hard it'd be for I
think the only issue is probably the amount of text they've used for the task.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just, some of these things make me question like how thorough they're testing their stuff, as well as do they really know what is a good way of like judging? Like, I don't want to say 8-man is necessarily bad, because there is, of course, a very, very small amount of competition. There's a record for it right now, and no one's really competing for it. But
Yeah, it is technically the fastest.
Yeah.
The fastest scale. So I get it from a like lower number is better type of standpoint, but yeah, going back to like other speed games, the fastest category doesn't always have to be the most popular one. And that's something that not only Jagex, but I think the RS community don't realize yet.
I mean, you're not wrong, because Chambers speedrunning for normal Chambers is probably one of the most nichest of things to speedrun in this game. There really isn't any teams running for it. Probably doesn't help that scouting is an issue, and it's a lot to take in when you're first getting into it. You need to like coordinate a team and create strats, and there's not many public resources for it at all.
Yeah.
So
I think for regs is probably solo. That's probably the most contested, and that's obviously a couple minutes slower than like the overall.
It's like was it like 12 minutes or something compared to 8:46? So there's a couple minute difference. But solos and teams both have their difficulties, because in teams it's a lot more awareness. You need to be more aware of like what's going on team wise, like looking at your players' HPs and like doing things to not get your teammates cucked, as we expressed earlier with acid and burn.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, you're not wrong. There's a lot of different categories. I think like Mario has like a lot of different categories, like 16, what was it, 16-star speedrun or something? I can't remember the exact amount of stars, but there was a video that Summoning Saw made, and it was going over that one.
Yeah, I don't know which one is the most popular as well. Like, for example, Minecraft is RSG, which is like random seed, which obviously is a lot slower than the set seed. Pokemon, like the first generation, is glitchless, because the glitch version is literally under 1 minute. So
I see. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, so things like that just make certain categories like more preferred or more popular, and that should I feel like that should be the aim, and that's why I said earlier about waves versus room times versus overall time in TUB, like be the change you want to see, right? Basically.
All right. I think now is time to ask the final question, which is, what would you like to see regarding the future of old school RuneScape? So this could be, in any aspect, PvM, communication, QA testing, but I want to hear your thoughts.
I don't know, because I feel like Jagex is definitely on a different trajectory than what we want, and it's probably for them short term better than what we wish for, because again they have to compete with other types of media, and like mobile release probably didn't help with it as well either. And what I really want is just more, I don't know, like in terms of high level PvM, it's probably more difficulty in terms of like mechanical difficulty rather than like endurance difficulty, as I said earlier about ToA, and more stuff like if you do a certain thing efficiently, it helps you more than the not doing it means punishment. As for communication, I think I said it earlier. I feel like JMODs in general should just take a step back from the content they made and like don't take our feedback too much personally. Also, what would be nice for Jagex is to, if they release like big content, they should probably like look back at the content. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
instead of spending a maximum of 3 weeks trying to tweak the content, they should just continuously try to tweak the content till it's good. And I know it's not gonna happen because they have tight schedules of releasing other types of content, and yeah, that's kind of sad. And I feel like if they spent more time on like making the current content good, then it would probably be better overall in terms of quality. Yeah, and I don't know what else.
I mean, is there any like specific types of PVM that you want to see in the future? I mean, there might be something you could like pull from RS3 or like pre-EOC as well, like engineering.
I like.
But
I would. Yeah, the engineering is alright, but I think turmoil might be kind of good because I've done like some basic calculations of it, and I feel like, and I think trolls add more DPS or about the same DPS as turmoil would compared to piety. And if you remove soul split from the equation, because soul split is obviously super broken, there is like a thing to say about turmoil. You don't have a really good range alternative because, well, unless you also add anguish or whatever it's called, you don't. Your best range option is like leech range or something,
yeah,
which isn't really that good. And yeah, you would only get deflect and like a turmoil. So there is already a limitation of that prayer book. You also can't one tick flick it because you don't get the full boost. And the only advantage is your melee strength or like melee DPS and deflect prayers. And I feel like that would be pretty good. I also like. Yeah, RS3 has the version,
yeah,
but
it does. But I think he's talking about the pre-EOC version of the book. So before
yeah,
EOC happened,
definitely.
there wasn't the range and mage equivalents.
Yeah. I also kind of hinted at Storm of Armadale, but I think Storm of Armadale might be a little bit too much. It is a kind of fun mechanic though, like how it works and shit. You notice like the subtle differences between RS3 and like OSRS. No, not RS3, but pre-OC and like OSRS in terms of how they dealt with making magic more viable. But yeah,
Creep was definitely present though in that game. God, you just face rolled so many things, and the only endgame boss is that there was just like QBD, Nex. I mean, there was dungeoneering, but that wasn't really a raid. It was more like an activity, and it was a skill. What else? Drawing a blank.
Tormented Demons.
Oh yeah, TDs as well.
Yeah, I don't know, like, the funny thing is, like, I talked about it earlier, is like how pre-OC also had a lot of defensive power creep, right?
Yeah.
And,
Divine.
yeah, yeah, like Divine, Soul Split, Overload. Overload is really good defensively. That's what people don't. I don't think people highlight it that much, and like Unicorn and like Backyaks and shit like that. Which would which is why they made bosses like Nex work in pre-OC, where in old school it probably doesn't work as good, because if we brew, we lose DPS, and it's a really bad feeling after doing so much like avoidable damage stuff and pure DPS, and brewing is basically just not done unless you're like overloaded in chambers or salted in ToA.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a little sidetrack again, but I don't know, like probably more weapons, basically. Like there's something to figure out again. It's always nice, for me at least. But I don't know on top of my head what what type of weapons I want to see. I feel like we have most stuff of pre-OC already, and personally, I'm not really for summoning, mainly because I don't think we realize how overpowered it is.
If summoning came in the state that it did, it'd be completely busted. And for it to be like okay, we would need like pretty much buffed up versions of every single boss. Like we would need like a new God Wars type thing. So like I don't know, like maybe like hard mode God Wars or something. It's just because right now there's too much content that is based around our inventory. So for summoning to work, it's either A, you can't bring familiars with you, or B, there just needs to be like more bosses where it's worth having summoning.
Yeah. I feel like people just like imagine like how broken we find trolls at the moment, but
It's nothing compared to Steel
basically,
Titans.
yeah, every Titan type thing already does more damage on their basic attack.
Oh yeah.
And like they have specials as well, so like I don't know, it just feels it's a little bit broken, I think.
Just imagine just fucking nuking something with a bunch of Steel Titan specs on top of ZCBs. Fucking pop the ZCB and the Steel Titan's like, alright, time to drop this bitch afterwards.
Yeah, it would be fun though.
Bro, man, you could one-shot Vasa with fucking summoning, like, with ZCB into Steel Titan specs. Oh my god. That'd be lit.
Yeah, that's the thing, because we have obviously like things that like are close to RS3, like Nex obviously is a 1-to-1 basically.
Yeah.
TDs, gorillas and things like that, but we never had the pre-AOC stuff inside chambers or TOB or TOA even now.
Yeah.
So that would be kind of like interesting.
That'd be crazy.
Oh yeah, one thing I really want from RS3 is like, you know, the dungeoneering puzzles?
Oh yeah.
Like, I kind of want those, because the puzzles in TOA, like, they get like really boring after doing 10 of them.
Yeah, some of the ones from Dungeoneering are like really cool and unique. Like, I mean, some of them are just skill based, but there's some other ones where you have to like kind of use your brain to kind of solve it. And then I think the one that was kind of similar to a Dungeoneering one was the one where you have to like go over the tile things, then flip it, and you take damage if you flip it manually, which was cool. I think there was one, I don't know if it's really much of a puzzle, but there was like that Ramo key one where you had to like try to kill off all the summoning familiars in there. There was the one with the ferret.
Yeah, the ferret.
There was a poison room one too, where if you were slow on it, you could still do it, but you just take a shitload of damage, if I recall correctly.
Right, and the ice sliding puzzles in the first, in the frozen part of the...
Yeah, floor 1.
The dungeon. Yeah. The ice sliding puzzles are obviously like a staple in all their Pokemon games, so...
Regigigas.
I would... Yeah.
That's
what I would like those as well in RuneScape somehow. That would be kind of fun as a puzzle room.
Yeah, that is fair.
Yeah, I feel like if they have puzzles that are like a little bit more complex, like where it isn't just 3 solutions or whatever the fuck the amount is for ToA before, for example. That would be really nice so that the puzzles stay interesting. I know some people don't really like them, like actually despise it. But yeah, I would like to see it because I like puzzles.
Answer your question real quick, Big Totes. I have like a giant list of people that I need to interview, but it's huge. I'm always okay taking nominations. It's just I actually got to get through that list. Because there's a lot of
get
people.
a small tease?
Huh?
Can we get a small teaser?
Okay, I can read off of this list, but some of these people I haven't contacted, so you guys, it's the only time I'm ever gonna tease this, alright? So,
Okay.
let's see, where is this list? Hold on. If I look up this list, where is it? Oh, alright, PVM podcast list it goes. Okay, so, I asked a couple people, I asked Pretz, but he turned me down.
Oh.
I asked, another one. I asked Kevzy, but work didn't make it work out. I asked him earlier, he agreed, but work kind of made it not work out. The people
Time zone differences, right?
For which one? Kevzy?
For KFC, yeah.
It was just because of work. I will make the time
Okay.
zone work. I will wake up early if I have to make it work. It's just that sometimes it doesn't work. Some other ones I had were Slinky, Konari, Opies, Seabet, Barack Obama, Smork. I haven't asked them yet. I think I've shown interest to The Rock, and I think he said he was down. Coxie, Cinderus, Noob Type. The only issue I had with Noob Type was that I kind of did that pseudo interview with him during my road to 600 video, so maybe much later in the future. Don't want to rush that.
Yeah.
Blowpipe OSRS, Koekenpan, but I'm already talking to you. Livey, Dudash. I asked Lord Hisoka, he said he'd be down. Dex. I think I asked Manfi, he said he'd be down. I already did Jenemy. I asked J Rays and he agreed. I think J Rays is kind of an oddball because he's somewhat underrated. He did 500 and he did it with Silent Prayers on, which I think is
I think he's underrated as well. Yeah.
Definitely underrated. Who else?
Like he made videos for like CAs and shit, and like slowly getting all the Oblivion Diaries done. Like
he's a zoomer.
Yeah.
I had this one. I'm kind of worried about asking this, but it was Chi and Sev, and maybe Harry as well, because they are some of the greatest chamber speedrunners in the game. But I've spoken to them before, and they seem pretty shy.
Okay, I see.
Noob Type, best PvMer 2022. Agreed, but I'm a little biased. Another one I wanted to do was Jamal plus Yonex, but Yonex said that Jamal would make him do all the talking. Hootie,
Right, yeah.
X Miami, Brixie, Playgrounds. Playgrounds doesn't play as much, but he was on my speedrun team, and before he also copped some competition wins. Starburst. Starburst is someone known in Cox's community pretty well, but he's done a lot of POB, and I think it'd be kind of cool talking to him. He also helped big time with in the Weeder Raids guide for ToA. He helped with that. And Still Remains, aka Alex, who does a lot of speedrunning stuff.
Yeah, I know him as well.
Another one I was thinking about recently was maybe asking Kirby. I know he was recently on. For. Why am I drawing blank? Saders.
Saybase.
Yeah, Saybase. Yeah. So he was recently on for that, but what people don't know is that me and Kirby have known each other for years. We were in the same social clan at some point, and we were kind of like rivals. I knew him back when his name was Dark Lord 1A. And when he was first starting his stream, we did top speedruns. So this was back when I was on my MacBook. But I've seen that man grow and grow as a PvMer and the early days of him getting into solar chambers. So I could probably
Right.
talk to him, and that'd be kind of like a reminiscing of the past episode. Just me and him going back and forth with a lot of dumb shit. So,
Right.
what about Scotty? That'd be a good one as well. I'm writing this down. But yeah, it's a long list of people. Not all of them I've asked, because I've got to get through everybody. But
Yeah.
it's tough.
You're basically booked through like I don't know, like
For a while.
yeah, March or something. I don't know.
Not everyone's I haven't asked, of course, so we don't know if I ask someone if they'll be like yes or no, and then I have to set up dates.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah.
who knows? Anyway, I sidetracked with that. But
It's kind of my fault because I asked for a teaser.
no, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to talk about in regard to the future of old school RuneScape? What you'd like to see, or shall we call it a wrap?
No, like they can do whatever they want. It's fine. If I'm not interested, I will play something else.
This man's gonna
Basically.
be a perma Pokemon streamer at this rate. It's lost.
Yeah. I mean, I always be like I feel like because I'm so like I obviously I'm staffed in Obliv and like I met the greatest people in this community. I don't think I would leave it that like
Yeah.
quickly.
I'm in the same
And,
boat. I've met some of my
yeah.
closest friends in this game. Thankfully.
Yeah, and I feel like even people like who like people who aren't really playing the game anymore, like they still like share like they play other games together because we all play RuneScape together. So it's pretty nice. Like
All right. Well, on that note, I think it's time to get to the conclusion. I'm not
Right.
gonna lie, I did not expect this to be almost 4 hours. Time really flew by, but
yeah,
it was
Like-
very lovely speaking with you in regards to all the topics. So thank you so
Right.
much, Mr. Coco.
no problem. Thanks for having me.
As
We
did-
got a little sidetracked with some things, but I think
it's fine, though.
Yeah, I think it's fine as well. Like to talk about other like random shit around like the things around this game really, and yeah, it's nice to share an opinion about this game. Which my opinions are like all over the place sometimes with this game. So yeah.
I think you have like some interesting opinions as well because you're someone that knows a lot of like how the game works in terms of like calculations and stuff. And of course, you
Right,
have discovered things as we spoke about earlier with win calculations and how
Yeah.
damage works P2 and all that fun jazz. So it's always kind of nice to hear the input from different players from around the game.
Okay.
But I will wrap it up for this episode. So I don't have a guest lined up for next week, and the reason for that is because next week we're going to be doing something different. So it's not going to be PvMer Spotlight. I wanted to kind of wait to do this before, like, I want to get my wins video done first and then do this, but I think I have to put that on the back burner a bit because I'm still working on it. It's just the original plan was to do it after. We're going to be doing to celebrate the 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, we're going to be doing a Q&A stream. So I'm going to put something up on Twitter and Discord, and any questions that anyone has, I will answer them. And I'm going to be joined alongside one of my closest friends on the game who is going to make it a good time, named Perceptivity. So it's going to be good memes. So I'll put something out there to collect some questions, ask anything. I'll do my best to answer them. As long as they're not too personal. You rats better not like come in and be like, yo, what's the size of your cock? Because I'm not going to answer that, fuckers. We let the cock command do that, but
Yeah.
on that note, I'm going to end the recording now and put this bad boy on YouTube.